that's a great thing because now we have another piece of the puzzle that's coming together for the investigative team to present to to the district attorney's office back in Idaho. But the bottom line is that for them to issue four, not one, but four felony murder arrest warrants on this perpetrator, they have substantial evidence, the strong evidence that linked him to this murder. So these murders. So I think it's a good thing. They're not going to reveal what they have, but at the same time, this is all good stuff. This is great that the investigators have this.
Yeah, a lot of praise is. Let me explain a couple things that are coming into our comment section. A lot of praise is coming in for law enforcement and Moscow, Idaho, really, and their law enforcement agency. They have been really in charge with assistance from some other state and federal agencies, including the FBI. But there's just a ton of praise coming in for the hard work of local law enforcement to get to this point. And we don't know if this is the mountaintop in this case just yet. We are in advance of the press conference. We have a lot to learn about this case and about this arrest in particular. But I can't ignore, of course, all of the praise that is coming in for the hardworking men and women of Moscow, Idaho's police department, as well as the assisting law enforcement agencies. This has been all they have. This has really consumed their lives. Ron can speak to that more. And then also, too, Ron, there's a lot of people calling for apologies because of all of the online sleuthing that was going on, pointing to this. I'm not going to mention names, but point to this person, point to that person, point to this neighbor, point to this person at this food truck, or point to this Uber driver. So many people that were prodded with questions, and that's the reality of the beast when we're talking about a story that rises to this level of fascination and obsession. But there's a lot of people out there calling for apologies for certain individuals, and while we don't know the entirety of the situation just yet, that's really part of the, we talk about online sleuthing. There's the blessing and then the curse, and the curse is sometimes that a lot of the information that comes up is just pointing investigators in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and this is human nature. This is what happens. Law enforcement takes a beating from the general public because they want the cases to be solved right away. I would anticipate in the future here going forward, there's a lot of people that might have to eat a nice piece of humble pie because these cases, they take time to solve. And again, like the police chief said, he said, I don't want to reveal too much to jeopardize justice because justice is what we're here for. We're here to bring evil to justice. And that's how it goes. Sometimes it takes a short period of time. Sometimes it takes a long period of time. And in this case, it took us 6 some odd weeks.
Ron, I got to let you go here.
Okay.
I know that you're going to be streaming on your channel at 4:00. What's
4:00?
What's your final little bit here as far as this case?
Hey, listen, JB. Again, I want to send out my prayers and strength and positive vibes to the victims' families. I want to also say thank you to the local, state, and federal partners who work tirelessly on this. And I can't forget about you guys, the press and the public, and all of the people who follow this case and respectfully engage in it. You guys, we rely on the public, JB. Police officers across this great nation, we rely on tips from the public. We need that partnership. We need that help. So thank you for supporting your local law enforcement across this great land. Thank you for having me, JB. I appreciate it.
Yeah,
I hope everyone goes over to Crime Time with Duty Ron and checks me out.
I hope that they do as well, Ron. You're a class act, and it's a pleasure having you on. And all the best to you. And I appreciate, of course, all the holiday love. You and I were texting over the holidays. All the best to you, my friend. Be good.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right.
Take care, all.
Duty Ron, everybody, who also helps us out a lot at WFLA now in different respects. So we really appreciate him. We're about to bring on Jennifer Coffendoffer here in just a minute. Retired FBI agent, FBI expert, of course, our community, our group, our people on Twitter and on social media. They know Jennifer well, and I'm sure we're very, very curious to hear from Jennifer. As again, if you're joining us and you're looking for the police press conference, I hit it with the tap of the touchscreen and we go to it live, full audio. In fact, let's just make sure that we have some audio coming in, and we do. It's very quiet in there right now. But members of the media are descending here on this location. Members of the public are coming into this room. It appears to be a courthouse, a courtroom where they're going to be. It's probably just the biggest room that they have as far as as far as accommodating just the massive amount of reporters and journalists that are coming in from all over the place. Jennifer is standing by. She'll be here with us in just a second. I want to share something with everybody that about this case that I thought was particularly interesting, and we've covered a lot of cases here on WFLA Now. We do it together. We do it interactively. We bring in your comments. We bring in your video questions. We try to make you part of the conversation and also separate fact from fiction and talk about how we stay rooted in reality on these live streams, so that when you come to us, you know that we are reporting information that is verifiable, credible, and we're not going to steer you down the wrong path. But I'll share with you for a moment. I'm just going to take a moment to talk with everybody here about one thing about this case that I thought, to me, when I went home for the holidays, people asking me left and right about this case, family members, friends of mine who obviously they know the work that I do. And this is the case that everyone is talking about. People asking if the case has gone cold. What do you find interesting about the case? And of course, I'm just always just wanting there to be resolution and wanting there to be justice and wanting there to be the uncovering of this monster, whoever this monster may be. And I'll share one thing about this case that I have gravitated towards. And the moment that the news came out about the white Hyundai Elantra, I thought that there was something interesting there. Now, as time would progress, and there was nothing coming back on the white Hyundai Elantra, I started to point, and I tweeted out about this. I talked about this on stream about how peculiar I thought it was that after a couple of weeks, with the heightened sense of awareness that there was in Idaho and Washington State, and really all areas within 120, 150, 200 or so miles of Moscow, Idaho, the fact that the white Hyundai Elantra hadn't been uncovered, I thought that there was something there. I thought that there was something that was so strange and peculiar. It's not the most common car. It's not a top 10 most common car in the United States. And the fact that everyone was looking for it, from internet sleuths to the Idaho community to people like you and me, everyone looking for that white Hyundai Elantra, and that it didn't turn up after a few weeks when everyone was looking for it, I thought that I just had this feeling like there was something more to that vehicle, that it wasn't just going to be, that's just me taking off my reporter hat for a second. And I tweeted out, I said, how has that car not been found? It's not Chicago, Philadelphia, Dallas, Los Angeles, New York City. It's not a massive town. Of course, I'm sure there's a lot of Hyundai Elantras in town, but the fact that they didn't find it, and it took them all this time to, as we understand it, that Hyundai Elantra has been recovered in Monroe County at the home of Kohberger, again, here on the right side of your screen. That, to me, was something that I really was focused on online over the course of this 6+ week investigation. Joining us now on WFLA Now, great to have, of course, my friend and someone who our audience knows here well on WFLA Now, retired FBI agent Jennifer Coffindoffer. And Jennifer, you have been tweeting out quite a bit. You've been on News Nation. Great to have you on stream. Let's just introduce you to our audience. And what do you make of the arrest of 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger, as we're now less than 20 minutes away from that police press conference in Moscow, Idaho?
Well, first of all, hi, JB. It's good to be here. Always good to be with a friend. It made my day today. There were a couple of clues we had, right? When they were going to clean that crime scene, it was very clear that they were done with it, that they felt confident that they had extracted everything that they could, and that they were ready to move on in the investigation. I thought that was a very good sign. That, combined with the chief's change of mood, I'll call it, air of confidence, that all seemed to change. Then this morning, when we learned of this important press conference, I got a hold of the people I work with, my closest sleuth friends, and said, we need to find, who was arrested up there. And so, wow, it was just great news for the families, I think, to get some sense of closure. And then, of course, even since the arrest now, we're learning so much. As an example, the cleaning crew isn't cleaning anymore. They cleaned for about an hour, according to News Nation reporting. So Why? Why is that? Well, that, as a former agent, gives me kind of good feeling that perhaps he's cooperating. Perhaps we have a Dennis Rader type person that is actually going to cooperate and stay in control of this narrative. Also, that combined with the fact that he mentioned something to the effect of, am I the only one arrested, or have you arrested anybody else? I think is what Brian Ensign reported. That's another very important notation. Why? Because this is a PhD in criminology. This is someone who knows what you should and shouldn't do upon arrest. And the number one thing you shouldn't do is ever open your mouth. And he opened his mouth, at least saying that statement. So was it purposeful to try to throw out something that wasn't true, so that to give a question mark? Or is he starting to talk? Was he starting to talk just with that questioning, JB? So I think this is going to be very interesting to see how this ferrets out in terms of the prosecution.
We're about to go to hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyJennifer, questions and comments coming in, with Jennifer Coffindoffer joining us, as we now have 17 minutes until the police press conference. Again, if you're just joining us, we now have, we brought in a second and third feed. So if this feed goes out for whatever reason, we have backup feeds. And I say that again because there's so much press converging on Moscow, Idaho, trying to get out their signal. What I find so interesting about what you just said, Jennifer, and where I see a lot of comments coming in, I'll just throw up a couple just to show that we're paying attention to our comment section. When I look here, I'm paying attention to the comments coming in. Chad Bird asking, we talked about this a short time ago, hashtag HeyJB, what is the motive? Jennifer, we talked, there have been so many experts and forensic experts that have talked about this at great length, but one of the questions that was asked was whether or not this person, this suspect, whoever is responsible for these crimes, how were they adept enough to cover their tracks? And if we have somebody that is studying criminology, Master of Arts in criminal justice, I think that of course, really it's the fact that they are studying criminology. They're a PhD student at Washington State University. That is a very, very interesting note on this case, because we don't know, after the murders took place, we don't have any real concrete timeline as to how long the suspect was in that house cleaning up and making sure that they weren't leaving behind any evidence.
No, that's true, JB. This person is very well versed. It's obvious by the fact that he has eluded law enforcement for almost 7 weeks. I mean, it's really amazing. You can go in and commit that kind of a bloody, vicious murder, not of one person, but of 4 people, and get away with it this long. In terms of a motive, I was on record as saying a possible incel. And I think that could possibly be part of the internal motive that resonated hate. But as things are developing, there are some people, JB, that kill because they want to know what it feels like. They're curious. They want to know if they can get away with it, and they just want that feel of killing. And but I think Kaylee and Maddie were targeted, and that is where I'm getting this incel, feeling that this individual might have had that festered and led up to this.
Levi is asking, hashtag HeyJB, why is there only 1 count of murder against Bryan? And again, Bryan Kohberger, 28 years old. And I am hearing now, look, as far as the channels that we follow, I am also hearing that as of right now, it is a singular count, but that's not, people are asking, why is that? And I don't find that to be too far out of the ordinary. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jennifer, but it's just about getting an initial charge in the system just so that you get this person off of the streets, allow the investigation to continue to the point where they can be more thorough with the filing of charges. But do you have anything to say here for Levi in our comment section?
Levi, the reason is all they have to show at this stage is probable cause that he committed a crime. And the crime they chose was a homicide against probably one of the particular individuals, because to take the time involved to do a probable cause affidavit with all the information that they have regarding all these 4 individuals would have been quite extensive. So in a probable cause affidavit, I don't want to say it's bare bones, but it's really just what's needed to prove probable cause.
Let's get this question on screen from Carmen. Hello there, Carmen. Again, use hashtag HeyJennifer or hashtag HeyJB, and we can animate your comments on screen from YouTube Live, Twitter, and we're about to launch on Facebook Live here in about 5 minutes. Carmen Love, did I hear correctly? The Elantra he drives was in the driveway when the cops arrived. I want to cross my T's and dot my I's here. I heard, and based on, of course, law enforcement sources, that an Elantra was found. An Elantra was found at his home in Monroe County. I have not heard, and perhaps a lot of this stuff gets lost in translation, because let me explain. This is all being done by text. When reporters find friends like Jennifer, and you find a law enforcement source that you are comfortable with and they are comfortable with you, it's all being done by text message. Everything is being done by text message these days. So something to as short as there was an Elantra could be misconstrued as to, okay, that is the Elantra. I keep seeing that an Elantra was found at the home in Monroe County, and that, of course, leads everyone to believe that it is the Elantra in question. Do you read that the same way, Jennifer?
Yeah, you explained it well.
Yeah, it's just, it's sometimes like we can't definitively say it's the Elantra. We don't have the year, we don't have the color, just that an Elantra was found at the home in Monroe County. Let's get to a couple other questions and comments that are coming in. Yeah, so Devil Dog is asking also about the arrested suspect affiliated with the white. It's a Hyundai Elantra, not a Nissan, as we're seeing here them zoom in and get ready for this press conference coming up here in about 11 and a half minutes time. Jen Art, hashtag HJB, he studies crime and murder. Case studies, question mark. And yeah, the fact that he is studying criminology can't be overstated, Jennifer, as far as how somebody was able to, in the middle of the night, savagely, brutally murder 4 people. And again, innocent until proven guilty. And I want to make sure that my words are not taken out of context. But the fact that he is studying criminology at Washington State University, 15 minutes away, really, from where this crime occurred, it really speaks volumes as to how, I think that they're speaking. Let's listen in here for a second.
Hello, hello, hello. Everybody look good? Microphone check. We're good? We will do one more with 5 minutes left on the main mic, but this is probably the last one on the wireless. We good? All right.
As they're getting ready now for the police press conference, doing a white balance, of course, doing microphone checks to make sure that all press in the back. Jennifer, I was talking about the fact that, yeah, he studies criminology at Washington State University, not too far away from where this all transpired.
Yeah, and not only studied, this is somebody that has gotten an undergraduate degree, gotten a master's degree in criminology, and was working on his PhD. So this is someone that was very interested, extremely well educated in this area. And I think that really lended itself to how he was able to commit these crimes. So I'm not going to say completely flawlessly, but somewhat flawlessly. Flawless enough that 62 FBI agents and 20 plus ISP agents and the Moscow Police Department have had to work their tails off. And it's taken weeks and weeks to have an arrest made.
Jennifer Coffendorfer joining us here on stream, everybody. So let me explain how this is going to work here for a moment. What we are going to do is we are going to take a 60-second break to welcome in our Facebook Live audience. Again, we're launching live across all platforms. We have a sizable audience on YouTube Live. They're also joining us on WFLA.com, the WFLA app, back in 60 seconds with a breaking news alert as we take you live to the 4 o'clock press conference in Moscow, Idaho.
WFLA Now will begin momentarily. WFLA Now will begin momentarily. Breaking news on WFLA Now. Here's JB Buno.
An arrest in the Idaho student murders. We are just a few minutes away from a police press conference in Moscow, Idaho, where we're expected to learn new details on the arrest of a 28-year-old in Pennsylvania on first-degree murder. Good afternoon, folks. JB here with you live on WFLA Now. We're about 7.5 minutes away from the press conference. We are now officially live across all platforms, looking at your hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyJennifer comments as we take you here live in the center of your screen to the courtroom, where they are going to be having the press conference at 4 o'clock Eastern, 1 o'clock Mountain, the press conference on an arrest made in the Idaho quadruple student murders. Press from all corners of the country, international press, all descending on Moscow, Idaho to learn about the arrest. And as we have it, the arrest, according to law enforcement sources, is of 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger. He is a PhD student at Washington State University. That is 15 minutes, Pullman, Washington, 15 minutes away from the rental home where the 4 students were stabbed to death. Joining us on the right side of your screen is Jennifer Koffendorfer. The big question, of course, that we get to now with about 6.5 minutes to go before the press conference starts, Jennifer, is what we're going to learn. I cautioned our audience at the beginning of this YouTube live stream. I don't think we're going to get a ton of information. We might get a little bit. What do you expect as far as what we're going to learn here in just a few minutes' time?
I agree, JB. We're going to get the bare bones. We might get a little glimpse, more of a glimpse into that probable cause affidavit, what led them here. We might get a glimpse as to whether they're looking at other individuals, the arrest of anyone else. But I think it's going to be a more bare bones. I think they'll only entertain a few questions, and I think we're going to hear a lot of it's an ongoing investigation.
Yeah, and Brandon is asking in our comment section, we're paying attention to Facebook Live, YouTube Live, Twitter, for hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyJennifer. How much info will we get from this press conference? We're not going to get any information that's going to compromise an ongoing investigation. You know, one thing that we haven't talked about, Jennifer, and for those of you joining us on Facebook Live, we've been live for about 45 minutes on YouTube Live and WFLA.com. One thing you and I haven't talked about is what he said, according to law enforcement sources. And I'll make sure that I have this right, because law enforcement sources have been talking to various members of the media. Brian Enton of News Nation tweeting out, I'm told when Idaho quadruple homicide suspect Bryan Christopher Kohberger was in custody, he asked, quote, if anyone else was arrested. What does that mean to you, Jennifer, as far as him asking if there was anybody else arrested in this particular case?
So from my standpoint, it's one of two things. He made a spontaneous utterance, just the surprise I'm sure he had at 2. I think he was arrested around 3 in the morning, and made that spontaneous utterance. Or this is no dummy. He's a PhD, and maybe he's trying to throw off, in other words, show law enforcement that somebody else would be involved by kind of throwing that out there. But followed by what happened next, which is the cleaning crew stopping their work in terms of cleaning up the King Road residence. That makes me wonder if he might not be cooperating.
Interesting here. Brandy says, hashtag HeyJennifer, it's been said that BK, and that's of course short for Bryan Kohberger, asked if anyone else has been arrested. Do you think he's playing games, or is there any indication that there could be a second suspect? I think that is perhaps something we actually might learn about when the press conference gets underway in about 4 minutes from now, is whether, look, we don't know if police officials, if law enforcement officials are going to open things up to questions. I would be very surprised if they did. They're probably more likely going to read a statement, and then that's going to be that. But one thing that they might touch on is whether or not they are following up on whether or not there are multiple suspects in this case. Do you think that that's something we might learn about, or do you think that that would be kept under wraps, Jennifer?
I think probably kept under wraps, but I
Okay,
just
so
going
5
to put
minutes.
myself out there.
So there is
I
going
think
to
it
be an
would be
opportunity for
shocking
questions and answers at the end.
if this
This is Idaho.
individual.
So, we
Hold
will
on
have
one second here,
had
Jennifer.
others.
Hold on one
Yeah,
second.
you
Raise
bet.
your hand. We'll have someone that is impartial, that doesn't know who the media is. They will actually be the ones that come around and bring the microphone. So we will have questions and answers. Please stay on point and ask the questions that will be relevant to this investigation. Let me see as well if there's any Evergreen or Argonaut students. You guys will have the first questions if you're here. So with that, we have 4 minutes and we'll get going.
Interesting how, as we're talking about whether or not they're going to be opening things up to questions, they say that they're going to be opening things up to questions and they have a wireless mic to pass around to various reporters. And I think if I heard that correctly, that student reporters are going to be the ones asking the first questions. I find that, of course, to be interesting. But we have Jennifer Coffindoffer here on the right side of your screen. We're about a little less than 3 minutes away from that press conference getting started. So look, as far as the big questions in this case, I went through them with Duty Ron about half an hour ago. I'm going to just kind of quickly go through them, Jennifer, and you can add any. How confident are they that they have the person responsible for the quadruple homicide? What is the motive? Do they have a motive at this time? What was the break in the case as far as evidence? Are there multiple suspects? And what is justice? What is tangibly justice for the victims' families? Those are some of the key questions, of course, that are going to be asked. But more specifically, I think we might hear questions about the white Hyundai Elantra. What else do you anticipate hearing about in the next couple of minutes here, Jennifer?
Well, first of all, I do want to say the fact that they're opening up this to questions exactly parallels what they did when this case first broke. They had a news conference. They let the Argonaut and local individual journalists from Moscow ask questions first. So I find it interesting they're paralleling how they held their first press conference. Secondarily, in regard to a lot of those questions, I think they're very confident. Obviously, they have probable cause that a judge has signed off on, so we know that definitely. I think they're very confident. Already, just in the sleuth community, we've made a lot of links to this individual. And I think that Elantra, as you said, we can't say it's the Elantra, but the inference is definitely there. I think that they will hash that out at this news conference. I still think they'll be limited about a lot of what they have to say, though. I'm
very curious to know about specific questions, the DNA evidence, and what specifically is the DNA evidence that they have tying, again, 28-year-old Bryan Kohberger to the deaths of Ethan Chapin, Maddie Mogan, Xana Kernodle, and Kaylee Goncalves. 20 and 21 years old, killed on November 13th in the middle of the night. Jennifer, any final thoughts? We're going to kind of taper off here into the press conference getting underway. Any final thoughts before we get underway live from Moscow, Idaho?
No, other than I'm just so grateful this day has come for the victim families.
Likewise, as we take a look now around the room, Jennifer, we're going to break down what we have learned and what we didn't learn. What are the biggest unanswered questions remaining after the press conference is over? So stick around to our YouTube, Facebook, WFLA.com audience. As soon as the press conference is done, we are back live to talk about what we learned and what we didn't in regards to the arrest reportedly being made in the Idaho quadruple student homicide. Let's listen in.
Has confirmed just recently that he is going to be charged with first degree murder in this case with those 4 University of Idaho students who were moved back on the scene inside that 6-bedroom rental. Still a lot of questions remain. What's the motive? Is there answers to those questions? We've also reached out to some of the citizens. You've heard from one of them. And actually, before
Thank you for coming today. Last night, in conjunction with the Pennsylvania State Police, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, detectives arrested 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania, on a warrant for murders of Ethan, Zana, Madison, and Kaylee. I want to personally thank these agencies for their assistance in this case. Kohberger resides in Pullman, Washington, and is a graduate student at Washington State University. We will provide as much information as we can about the extradition to Idaho and the criminal process. However, due to Idaho state law, we are limited in what information we can release today until Kohberger has his initial appearance in Idaho court. I want to express my appreciation to our local community, the people of Idaho, and those throughout our nation who provided information to help us investigate these murders has been very impressive. We've received over 19,000 tips, and we've conducted over 300 interviews. To recap this case, on the evening of November 12th, Kaylee and Madison arrived home at about 1:56 a.m. after visiting a local bar and street food vendor. Ethan and Zana were at the Sigma Chi house before arriving home around 1:45 a.m. The two surviving roommates had also been in the community but returned around 1 a.m. On the morning of November 13th, a 911 call was made at 11:58 a.m. reporting an unconscious person at the residence. The call came from inside the home from one of the surviving roommates' cell phones. Moscow police responded and found 2 victims on the 2nd floor and 2 victims on the 3rd floor. On November 17th, autopsies were conducted and the Latah County coroner confirmed the identity of the 4 victims. The cause and manner of death was homicide by stabbing. Some had defensive wounds, and each had been stabbed multiple times. These murders have shaken our community, and no arrest will ever bring back these young students. However, we do believe justice will be found through the criminal process. This was a very complex and extensive case. We had developed a clear picture over time, and we stand assured that the work is not done, but be assured the work is not done. This has just started. Since November, we have remained laser focused on pursuing every lead in our pursuit of justice for the victims and their families. I recognize the frustration with the lack of information that's been released. However, providing any details in this criminal investigation might have tainted the upcoming criminal prosecution or alerted the suspect of our progress. We will continue to provide as much information as we can as the process moves forward. Today, I want to specifically thank our dedicated Moscow Police Department detectives, patrol officers, the Idaho State detectives, the Idaho State troopers, and their crime lab technicians and scientists, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation for the resources and personnel to conduct this massive investigation. It was the dedication of them and the persistence and the numerous hours that led to an arrest. Fortunately, these highly skilled people worked together as a cohesive team to solve this case. I also want to thank our community and the nation. Over the past 6 weeks, I've been continually reminded of how much our community cares. Locally, public support has been exceptional with kind words, food for investigators, and letters of support. You will never know how much your words of encouragement help us through these trying times. I appreciate each of you and each of your kindness. Agencies and individuals from across the nation have reached out to us to express their support to this department. I'm reminded how our Moscow community, our families, and the nation has been impacted by this daily. Finally, I do want to thank our media partners for the help. You kept this in the news. You helped us with tips. You kept things going, and we truly appreciate that. And you are the product of those 19,000 tips that we received, which is an impressive number. I would like to invite Bill Thompson, the county prosecutor, up at this time.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Bill Thompson. I'm the Latah County prosecutor. And it's sad to be here, but happy to be here at the same time. As Chief Fry indicated, a criminal complaint was filed yesterday here in Latah County, charging the defendant, Mr. Kohberger, with 4 counts of first-degree murder, in addition to felony burglary, which involves entering the residence with the intent to commit the crime of murder. Mr. Kohberger, and let me preface, there is a pending case now in court, and I and my office and the investigators have to live with the restrictions that our Supreme Court places on pretrial publicity. That said, I promise you we will share with you through the court process or otherwise whatever we are allowed to. I just appreciate your patience on that. The factual basis for the charges are summarized in what's called a probable cause affidavit that is on file with the court. According to the rules of the Idaho Supreme Court, that is sealed until Mr. Kohberger is physically back in Latah County and has been served with the Idaho arrest warrant. At that time, we expect that that affidavit will be available to you so you can share the true facts with all of your readers and your watchers and your listeners and all the people who are interested and really need to know what's going on. So please have patience with us on that. We hope to get that to you as soon as we can. As far as Mr. Kohberger, I can share with you that he is a graduate student at Washington State University and has an apartment residence over in Pullman. He has had an initial appearance in front of a judge in Pennsylvania. He is being held without bond, and the warrant from our magistrate judge here also provides for no bond. We understand that he's scheduled to be back in court in Pennsylvania next Tuesday afternoon, and that a public defender has been appointed for him there. The process at this point is, since he was arrested in another state, he has the opportunity to either waive extradition and return voluntarily to the state of Idaho, or if he prefers not to waive extradition, then we will initiate extradition proceedings through our governor's office. If we do that, it can take a while for him to get here. So again, I'm asking for your patience and understand that's just the way the system works. Once he gets here, he'll have an initial appearance with our magistrate. They'll deal with issues such as making sure counsel is competent counsel is representing him, and the case will be scheduled for further hearings. Your primary source of factual information is going to be the court record, because that's what the Supreme Court says we need to refer you to. So please pay attention to what's going on in court and have people there to watch and hear what's being said. As an attorney, myself and my office, we are limited on what we are allowed by the courts to say outside of the courtroom. So please just work with us. Finally, as the chief indicated, this is not the end of this investigation. In fact, this is a new beginning. You all now know the name of the person who has been charged with these offenses. Please get that information out there. Please ask the public, anyone who knows about this individual, to come forward, call the tip line, report anything you know about him to help the investigators and eventually our office and the court system understand fully everything there is to know about not only the individual, but what happened and why. Next, I'll introduce Colonel Ked Wells from the Idaho State Police. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Kedrick Wills. I serve as the director of the Idaho State Police and certainly want to express our appreciation for your attendance here today. These tragic murders took 4 young, vibrant lives from our community. Nothing we do can bring them back. The only thing that we can do in law enforcement to honor their memories that we know of is to bring this to a successful conclusion. This has been a very difficult time for the families, the university, the community, and the state of Idaho. However, it is also proven that communities come together in tough times. Certainly appreciate the support of the local community and our national audience that has been following us as our investigators have worked through this case. I'm thankful also to you, the media partners, who have helped keep this case in the forefront that generates the tips and we hope will continue to generate information that will help us to a conclusion of this proceeding. I'd like to express our appreciation on behalf of the Idaho State Police to Chief Fry, his leadership, and the entire Moscow Police Department for the way that they handled this from the very beginning. He directed the right people to the right positions that led us to this conclusion today. I've had the utmost confidence in this investigation and in Chief Fry, as well as in Mr. Bill Thompson and the Latah County Prosecutor's Office, who've been a great partner throughout this. Nothing has deterred the commitment of the investigators who've worked on this case, regardless of the organization they represent. It's been very trying and very difficult, as you know, that it has been on those investigators as they do the tedious work that they're so good at doing. The partnerships is what's led here as well. The partnerships between Moscow Police Department, I'd like to express our appreciation with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, specifically the special agent in charge out of the Salt Lake City Division, Dennis Rice, and also the work that happened in the last 24 hours in Pennsylvania with the arrest with the Pennsylvania State Police and Colonel Evanchik with the Pennsylvania State Police. We appreciate what they've done across the nation to help us as well. As Bill shared, this investigation is far from over. In fact, I appreciate what he shared, that this is not an ending, but rather a new beginning. The difference now is, as he shared, that we are dictated what information we can share by the court process and by laws in our state of Idaho. And so we will share, as he shared, Mr. Thompson is absolutely committed to share everything he can share through the court process. We've got to make sure that we don't get in front of that process. And we really deeply appreciate everybody's support here. The relationships that were forged here and the partnerships that were forged have led to this. And based on that is why we're here today. And we continue to believe that the best way we can honor these 4 lives that have been taken is to make sure that we have a successful outcome here. One of the partnerships that's been forged throughout this is a partnership with the University of Idaho. And on that, I'd like to introduce the president of the University of Idaho, Mr. Scott Green.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Scott Green, President of University of Idaho. Today's news of arrest is a welcome one. It's relief to our university, our community, and our extended Vandal family. The outpouring of support over the past 6 weeks helped sustain us during the most trying time. It provided the strength that helped us navigate the international scrutiny visited on our students and employees. We are truly thankful for the compassion and acts of kindness shown to our community. Kindness is contagious, and it provided the light that reclaimed ground lost to evil and darkness. We first want to acknowledge and thank Governor Little for the early promise of financial support that enabled the university to secure our campus and focus on helping our students and our employees in the wake of the crimes. We also appreciate the Idaho State Police and the highly visible security presence that brought comfort and calm to a community shocked and confused by the senseless crimes. We never lost faith that this case would be solved and are grateful for the hard work of the Moscow Police Department and their law enforcement partners. Vast and committed FBI resources brought important expertise to this complex case. Across the board, dedicated, highly competent personnel worked this case to arrest. This crime has nevertheless left a mark on our university, our community, and our state. While we cannot bring back Maddie, Kaylee, Zaina, and Ethan, we can thoughtfully and purposefully carry their legacy forward in the work that we do. Our students come first, and that was proven each and every day of this investigation. We are committed to safely delivering the college town atmosphere, campus experience, and high-touch quality education for which the University of Idaho is known. With time, we will heal. We will move forward together, and we will remain Vandal strong. With that, I'd like to turn it back over to Chief Fry.
So now we will open the floor to questions. However, I want to remind everyone, as Prosecutor Bill Thompson explained, any factual information regarding the arrest of Kohberger is currently sealed per Idaho law and will not be released until he has appeared in an Idaho court. Please formulate your questions accordingly. I recognize there are a lot of questions, and I will try to answer as many of them as I can.
Lauren Patterson, Northwest Public Broadcasting, Spokane Public Radio. I realize the records are sealed. I guess I'm not too familiar with how it works, but can you tell us what tip, what lead, what piece of evidence really led you all the way from Idaho to the suspect in Pennsylvania?
As I've said in the past, that's part of our investigation, and we won't be releasing that at this time. We will have those answers. We'll have them as soon as we can make those available to you.
Then a quick follow-up and a two-parter. Is our community safe, or is law enforcement still on the search for other suspects who might be involved in this attack?
What I can tell you is we have an individual in custody who committed these horrible crimes, and I do believe our community is safe, but we still need to be vigilant, right? We still have talked about this in the past. We always need to be aware of our surroundings and make sure that we're aware of what's going on.
Hi, Chief. How soon into the investigation did police and law enforcement begin to spot Mr. Kohberger as a potential suspect? And a follow-up, how many tips, if you can say, were specifically related to Mr. Kohberger?
To the tip part, honestly, I can't answer that question, so I'm not even going to speculate on that. On the other part, that's part of our investigation, and it will come out. I'd like the mic to please come right over here.
Thank you. Dana Griffin with NBC News. Can you confirm that Kohberger asked whether or not anyone else had been arrested when he was in custody?
I cannot confirm that, or I'm not sure of that information, but that would still be a part of our investigation.
Did CODIS initially return any hits on this guy?
That's still part of our investigation, and that will come out. If we could get somebody over here, please.
And then one final question. Is there any message to the online sleuths who slandered and harassed people who they believed were responsible?
There was a lot of speculation going on, and we've always said from the very beginning that we're the official message that comes out, and to pay attention to what we're putting out there to the press.
I'm Nancy Liu with News Nation, and we were over at the house this morning, and you told us that the remediation would begin today. It was suddenly stopped. Can you tell us why?
Yes. The house cleanup has been halted, and that came by a legal request from the court.
Christina Corbin, Fox News. Chief, have you identified a motive?
That is part of the investigation, and that will come out as we continue the investigation. But what we still ask is for people to continually send us things in the tip line. We are still looking for more information. We're still trying to build that picture, just like we have stated all along. We're putting all the pieces together, and that will help.
Chief Veronica Miracle with CNN. Any indication that the suspect knew the victims?
That's part of the investigation as well. It won't be something that will come out at this point in time, but as we continue the investigation and as this case goes to trial, that will be brought forth.
Have you spoken to the families? Can you tell us what they've told you today?
Are you talking the victims' families?
Yes, the victims' families.
Yeah, we have reached out to the victim's family as we always do. We've done that daily, and we've continued to have contact with them.
Hey, Nate Sanford, you mentioned earlier that you're still seeking tips about Bryan and that people should still share whatever information they have. Can you speak at all about what specifically people should be reaching out for, like if they know something?
I would say anything and everything. As we've said all along, we know what tips we're looking for. We will take those tips and we will have professionals look at those and decide which pieces of those we need to use for our case. So we ask that everybody would do that.
Angela Palermo, Idaho Statesman. Your department and other investigators on the case took a lot of flack for keeping information close to your chest. Are you glad that you did that, and were you worried about tipping the suspect off?
I will 100% stand behind the way that we handled this investigation. And this all started from day one with our patrol officers arriving on scene, locking down the scene, us calling in the Idaho State Police, us calling in the FBI, and keeping information that was pertinent to this case very, very tight. We want to have a situation where when this goes to trial, there is no doubt that we've done everything right, and we've slowed down, and we've continued to slow down. We'll continue to do that.
Hey, Chief. Have you guys found the murder weapon or the Hyundai Elantra?
So we are still looking for all pieces of evidence, but we are still looking for the weapon. And I will say that we have found an Elantra.
Stephanie Becker with CNN. Can you tell what it was like when you got the phone call when the police told you that they had your suspect?
I can tell you, for a lot of law enforcement, it was a fairly sleepless couple of days with as we were leading up to everything that we were doing. But what I can tell you is I have faith in those agencies across the nation. I have faith in our officers. I have faith in the FBI, and they did a great job. But sure, there was some times, even throughout the day, that we were always concerned.
Hi, Chief. Don Back at CBS News. Can you talk a little bit more about the suspect's connection to Pennsylvania?
All I know is that he lives in Pennsylvania.
Chief Guy Tannenbaum from Nonstop Local KHQ in Spokane. More about the Elantra. We saw reports that you mentioned that you recovered an Elantra, but can you specify where that was found? And we know that that was one of the biggest pieces of information you were asking from the public to tip. Were you able to provide an information on whether those tips led to this seizure of an Elantra?
That's still part of the investigation that will come out in the future.
Chief Glenn Mosley, Idaho Public Radio here in Moscow. The additional police presence in town and on campus, semester's coming. Is that going to continue?
You will continue to see state troopers in the area. You know, we're talking to Latah County as well. You will see a presence of us that we're always have up on campus. We have assigned officers to that. So you will continue to see a law enforcement presence. I'm going to take two more questions.
Hi, Chief. Julie Scott, ABC News. Can you tell us if you eventually had a license plate number to the Elantra and how you tracked it to Pullman?
That's still part of the investigation that will come out.
Chief, hi, Matt Lovelace with the Murrow College of Communication. I want to ask about Mr. Kohberger as a graduate student at WSU. Are you aware of if he returned to campus after November 13th? And have you had any communication with departments on the WSU campus about his attendance?
So some of that is going to be followed up as we continue our investigation. We'll be asking some of those questions, but that'll come out in the near future. So what I do want to do is I want to thank you all. You really have been the national voice for us. You've given us the opportunity to get many, many tips, and I do appreciate everything you've done, and we'll continue to look forward to working with you in the future on this. So I'd like to thank you for that, and thank you for your time.
Breaking news on WFLA Now. Here is JB Buno.
The face of the suspect in the Idaho student murders. As investigators say, justice will be found and the community safe. A 28-year-old criminology student in Pennsylvania arrested for the quadruple stabbing deaths of 4 University of Idaho students. Good evening or afternoon. Good evening to you now. I think it's afternoon for where most of our audience is joining from. JB Buno here with you live on WFLA Now. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be breaking down what we have learned. And if you're, having a little bit of a moment of an eye roll, it's for good reason, is because investigators and the police chief, that being James Fry, he cannot divulge information that would compromise the ongoing investigation and, of course, the legal due process that is now to follow with the arrest of 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger, a PhD student at Washington State University studying criminology, had a Master of Arts in Criminal Justice from DeSales University in Pennsylvania in May of 2022. We're going to go over everything that we learned, everything that we didn't, and of course, the latter is more substantial. Let's bring in my colleague, actually, Jennifer Koffendorfer. That's the correct super there on the right side of your screen. Jennifer Koffendorfer, retired FBI agent, joining us back here on stream. Jennifer, I'm going to go over my takeaways here, but let's start with you. Your chief takeaways as we start to get into the hashtag HeyJB and hashtag HeyJennifer questions and comments.
Well, I think the biggest one was the fact that by legal court order, by a court order, that is why they stopped the cleanup of the crime scene. I find that to be very interesting. I could only think that would have to do with the fact that now that they have a suspect in custody, and as the prosecution continues, or now we're in the prosecution stage, sometimes a court will allow jurors to actually go back to a crime scene and go look at it. And I'm wondering if, since now we're in the court's venue, because we had a affidavit signed, we had a court sign off on it. That's the only thing I could think of as to why this has been court ordered. That really stuck out to me.
You think the crime scene might have been preserved enough to a point where they're halting things and saying, look, there might be more useful to us going forward here. Let's not clean this up and make this, tidy once again, given what has transpired with the arrest of Bryan Kohberger.
Yeah, I mean, this tells me that exactly his words, I think, a legal request by the court. That's the words I wrote down. Legal request by the court. The court is the judge. That's what we mean in our vernacular. And why is the court ordering that, other than if they could foresee that being a request by a defense attorney that he would want, or a prosecutor even. But it seemed odd that there was a legal request by the court. So I'm a little bit curious about that.
I have various notes, as I do during press conferences. I just scribble as many notes as possible, trying to keep up with what we're learning. Let me just first start with what everybody else was saying on YouTube Live. Hello to our YouTube Live, Facebook Live audience, WFLA.com. Hello to those joining us on Twitter as well. Look, there was just overall a look of relief on the face of Police Chief James Fry, and a bit of a smile. Not a ear to ear smile, but a smile enough where you can just see that there is tremendous relief on his face, knowing that he can stand there with confidence and say that the community is safe. Some of the quotes here: justice will be found, and that we have received a clear picture over time. But also saying here in my notes, the work is not done. A couple of notes that I have that I found was particularly interesting. Of course, learning that, look, we know that the arrest affidavit is going to come out, and that is going to be really what people are looking for, the treasure trove of information as to how they went from, in really what felt like 24 hours, how they went from talking about cleaning up the crime scene in the last PIO update, the last YouTube update that we got from Moscow yesterday, all of a sudden to today, everything forming in really a matter of hours. Talk about a massive turn of events. So the arrest affidavit might paint a picture as to how things went so quickly. And it really makes you wonder if there was one massive break in this case, something massive that led police to, again, Albrightsville, Pennsylvania is the town that is in Monroe County, northeastern PA, not too far away from the tri-state area. Also, as well, from my notes, of course, no bond. We know that he's not going to be able to bond out. And then that they're still looking for the weapon. You also find this interesting, Jennifer, and we talked about this before the stream. I admitted I was not comfortable saying that police had found the Elantra. There's a difference between a Elantra and the Elantra. Police found an Elantra. And while immediately people are going to connect the dots and go from A to Z, really, and say that is the one that police have been looking for, look, we don't even really know its color. All we know is that a Elantra was discovered really at the scene of where Bryan Kohberger was taken into custody. So whether or not it is the Elantra, look, that is going to become more clear over time. But not having the murder weapon, but maybe potentially having the vehicle, these are just some of the little nuggets that we were able to learn from this press conference.
Well, they're going to lock all that down. And there's so much more investigation to do right now. First of all, they've got all that locked down. They're getting search warrants for that vehicle, search warrants for his home, search warrants for his parents' home, for friends' homes. They are going to be unmasking every bit of this individual's, Mr. Kohberger's, relationships, his friends, his acquaintances. They're going to dive into all of that. Another clue that was given by the chief. Did you hear him say when he said 2 days ago? He said something like 2 days ago, it's been hard to sit back. It's been sleepless nights. So that gives us our timeline a little bit, JB, right? When there was the break. And that falls in line with, so that would have been Wednesday. That's when he announced we're going to do the cleanup, on Friday. It's going to start on Friday. So we want you to know there's going to be activity around. That was when we saw his mood and confidence change. And clearly that's when they were honing in and just putting together their arrest plans, getting that probable cause affidavit written up, getting it to a judge, doing all the machinations that are required to make an arrest.
You've been part of countless FBI investigations, Jennifer. We're going to get to your hashtag HeyJB, hashtag HeyJennifer. Following them now, folks. I'm keeping an eye on our YouTube Live, Facebook Live comment section, keeping an eye on Twitter as well. I do a lot of multitasking here when we're live on stream, so I'm keeping a very close eye on your comments, and I see a bunch coming in. Juan, Veronica, Janice, Deborah, Michelle. We're going to get to your questions. We're going to be adding them to the queue if they have hashtag HeyJennifer or hashtag HeyJB. But can you paint the picture, Jennifer, to me? And I can't help but have a bit of a smile on my face, because what it must be like in that room when you get that break. All of a sudden, I mean, for weeks, you're talking about just endless amounts of blood, sweat, and tears being put into this investigation. And you're thinking, my goodness, are we really going to get that break? I mean, I'm sure that there's more hope in some corners of the room than others. And some people might be just trying to will themselves and motivate themselves by saying that we have hope. We are going to get the person responsible for this. But what is it like in the room when you and your team find out, okay, this might be it. This might be the break we've been waiting for. We're on to something here.
Oh, JB, it's, you don't want to say it makes you elated or happy, because you're talking about the murder of 4 innocents. But it's a conclusion of, it's a conclusion of one part of the investigation and the restart of a new. I like how he put that. It is elating to realize your fruits as law enforcement have come together, and that you're able to bring something to this family in terms of closure. There is no more rewarding of a profession, at least just in my opinion, than to be a law enforcement officer and be able to put people like Mr. Kohberger before a judge and before trial, and to bring someone to justice. No greater feeling.
I can only imagine. I've never been in law enforcement, but I've spoken to just so many individuals in the field, and understanding what goes into it, and understanding what the men and women and what our proud law enforcement community members go through behind the scenes to bring justice to cases that we care about, and the cases that don't get as much exposure. Just learning more and more from yourself, from so many others, Jennifer. It's that's why I always have to ask that question: what it is like when you find out that you are on the path to justice. Again, here in the Stream Center, we're going to be getting to your comments and your questions coming in as well. I'll bring up this question. Elise is cool, says hashtag HeyJB. His nose looks broken. Do you think that the defensive wounds has led to his nose being broken? And I've seen too many of this to really put to ignore this. And I'm always responding to our comments, and I try to keep things rooted in reality here. There is a bit of a curvature to his nose, without question. I think so much has been made, Jennifer, of his eyes and really the stare, and whether or not, I'm going to ask you too, whether or not you think that if that's a big deal, little deal, or no deal as far as the stare that we get from these mugshots, because sometimes a lot is made about that stare, and other times it's not as big of a deal. But in this case, all anyone is talking about is this cold stare that he possesses. And then also too about look, curvatures and noses, that is not all that uncommon. So there's nothing to state that he had some sort of, facial fracture of some kind, or if there are any injuries. But look, if he did have any injuries from that night, from November 13th, that there's a good chance, there's a lengthy amount of time, really almost 7 weeks, for those injuries to heal.
Right. And remember, the exact words used by law enforcement were defensive wounds, or the coroner, both of them. So defensive is like this. This is defensive. This is defensive. We didn't hear anything about a struggle, the normal vernacular you would use to describe a fight. These kids were sound asleep in the wee hours of the morning after having had a full day and a full night of activity. They were laying there, and from somebody who's been attacked, when I was conscious, it happens so fast. And they were sound asleep as somebody is coming up with a knife. People keep saying, well, why didn't anybody hear anything? This is so intense. And so, the life was within minutes drawn out of these poor kids. And so back to the eyes though, JB.
Yep.
I will say it's a matter of opinion, and I'll give you my opinion.
Sure.
I can't think of one person who's committed crimes like this that doesn't have empty eyes. I actually pointed it out on Twitter at very early this morning when I saw his shot here, this exact shot. Look at those eyes. They have an emptiness. There's no aliveness, no feeling. It's like staring into, a black marble. That's how I see it.
This is the problem, right? Man, where do we start? Where do we start? Where do we start with this? Listen, welcome back to the channel, you guys. Those who are new here for the first time, my name is Nathan Daly. I'm a 13-year law enforcement veteran. You guys, I have a lot of experience. This case is very, very interesting. That last statement she made, even as an FBI agent, I think that's very interesting. This is what made this case so chaotic. People's opinions. People's opinions that are not rooted in any type of legitimate facts. There are a lot of people who have cold eyes. She has cold eyes. If you really look at her, it means nothing. It absolutely means nothing. There was a guy who was the neighbor. He was a neighbor of the victims, and he was reporting stuff. He came on. People were saying the exact same thing about him. His eyes are cold. Look how he talks. Look how he's talking about the case. I bet he did it. This is what happens when you just run around and you just speak and you don't have a clue as to what you're talking about. People are spitting out so much information, and it's not valid. It's not rooted in any type of valid facts, no evidence. You're just looking at a person's mannerisms. I've heard so much in reference to this case. Hey, look at this guy on the video. Look how he's walking. Look at the shoes he's wearing. His toes are out. It's cold outside. He stepped outside with a tank top. I bet he's the killer. These are the type of ridiculous speculations that make this case just astronomically crazy. I've never seen it this bad. And the reality is you don't know anything. You don't know anything. And you're just so desperate to say something just to make it seem like you know what you're talking about. I think that's the biggest issue with this case. His eyes mean nothing. It's a person taking a picture. He's a suspect. His DNA allegedly was found at the scene. That also doesn't mean much because they didn't tell us much of anything. This press conference was a waste of time. It was a waste of time. Nothing was shared that was relevant, you guys. Absolutely nothing. They should have just waited for him to have been extradited to Idaho so they could provide the information that people want to know about. We want to know the facts. What facts do we want to know? We want to know about the evidence. We want to know about the probable cause. How did you identify this person as being a suspect? And listen, you guys, I have to say this. He's a suspect. They don't even know if he's the offender. We don't know. Innocent until proven guilty. You can think you have the killer, but you cannot prove it. It means nothing. Listen, this photo, I've seen the FBI do it before, you guys. If you got to be in the profession to understand, we are well aware that sometimes they get the wrong person. Sometimes they get the wrong person. At the same time, we know that there is a connection between him and this case. One of the biggest issues that I have is that they didn't give us anything that they could have given us. They could have given us a lot more. If they were a lot more confident about this, they could have shared a lot more. One, they should have waited till he got here. Extradited from Pennsylvania. You guys, he's on the East Coast, right? Idaho's on the West. Listen, they need to put him on the first class out of here. First class. They should have never said anything. They should have never said anything at all. And so, you know, I've watched and paid attention to this case. It's been 2 months, November 14th to today. And let me tell you something. One thing that's interesting about this case, every single day they reported about a lot of nothing. They reported a lot of nothing. Now, we're going to go over certain things that really stood out to me. And I told everybody on the stream that I did. I did a stream on this case, what was it, maybe 2 weeks ago. And I said, listen, you guys, you're going to be shocked when you find out that all of you are wrong, that you have no clues what you're talking about. All these people were talking about, it got to be this. Oh, it's the food truck guy. It's the Uber driver. Oh, I bet it's the boyfriend. He went to Africa. Oh, I bet it's so-and-so. Listen, I said this is the easiest case to solve, right? Because again, what makes it easy is, you know, it has to be but so many people. You know, he gained access. You know, we talked about that on the last stream that we did on this case. There's a good chance. Let me just be clear. We don't know whether or not this guy is actually the offender or not. He made a spontaneous utterance, allegedly, to the police when he was arrested. The spontaneous utterance was, "Did you get anybody else?" You know, that could be a couple of different things. It could be him playing the investigators, or it could be him stating that, you know, hey, I'm not the only one involved. People said, oh, it's one of the frat boys. It's the college professor. You know, one of the some TikToker was like, hey, I pulled out my tarot cards and I started talking to the spirits, and they told me that the professor is responsible for this. I said, Jesus Christ, you can't make this up. Listen, you can't make this up. You know, what did I say on the last stream? I said, listen, you guys, you would be surprised if this was a serial killer. That's what I said. I said, if it's not a college student, it has to be a serial killer, or it could be both, or it could be multiple students. You don't know. And again, they weren't even able to share a motive. Motive is what people want to know. Motive. You know, why do I say serial killer, you guys? For those who don't know, there have been a string of stabbings within that area, right? Idaho, outside of Idaho, that have not been solved. Stabbings, people have been stabbed to death. You know, another thing that people don't realize when it comes to these homicides is that there are a lot of cases that go unsolved. You know, people were hounding the police in reference to this. I said, you guys have no clue how a murder investigation works. You know, you're not supposed to reveal certain things until you're confident or until you have somebody in custody. This press conference just showed me that the police department is not as confident as to what they have until we get the affidavit, the arrest warrant. At least the arrest warrant will give us explanations as to the probable cause, because he's being charged with burglary, he's being charged with murder. So then they will write out on the affidavit, you know, what the probable cause was that led them to make that charge that the judge signed off on, right? In the previous stream, we talked about the Elantra, the white car, and how people were saying the one that they found crashed one state over had to have been the killer's car. You know, and I had to remind people that, you know, thousands of people own a white Elantra, right? Where'd they find this white Elantra? Allegedly, they found it at his apartment, right? They were able to locate it. Where was he at? I mean, correction, they found it all the way in Pennsylvania. So, you know, it's so easy to be led astray. I just wish people would just be patient and allow the evidence to come out and then start speculating after the evidence is provided from the police, right? From the FBI. Let them provide the evidence and then let's play the speculation game. But this right here in this case was out of control. Absolutely out of control. You had people, professors, you had neighbors, you had students, you had friends receiving death threats, followed, accused, you know, all these accusations from people who don't know a damn thing about the case or what's going on. You know, one thing that I noticed about this case, which I thought was very interesting, that made me feel like this was a premeditated attack, was because there was no evidence outside of the house, right? There were footprints that the police stated they located. There was no blood in obvious areas. That much death, there's blood. There should be blood everywhere, right? And so, of course, we didn't see inside of the home, so we don't know what that crime scene looked like. But I assure you, it looked horrendous. You know, I speculated that the killer could have already been lying in wait inside the home prior to the victims getting in, waiting for them to fall asleep, because there was no forced entry. And so there's a lot of things that the police did not provide at all in order to give us a clear picture as to how this whole thing started to manifest, you know, that particular night. So, you know, there was just too much, just absolutely too much in reference to this case. So what do we know? We don't know anything. Thanks to this press conference, it was a waste of time. But I will take questions, you guys. You know, ask away. The way we do it over here on this channel is put a Q in front of your post, and then I'll pull it up on the screen. I'll answer it, and then we'll have a whole discussion about it. I'm really curious to know what you guys think. This was definitely a waste of time. I will pull up some information about this gentleman, because what we do know about the suspect who's been identified, and once again, I have to say this, until we know more, just because he was arrested doesn't mean he's going to be convicted. Just because he was arrested doesn't mean he can't beat charges. Just because he was arrested doesn't mean he's the killer, right? We know plenty of people who have unfortunately been convicted of an offense and later on released because they did not get the right person. I'm not saying that that's what this is with this case, but what I am saying is we need to be patient and wait to get the rest of the information before and see how it all plays out. The thing about the defensive wounds, I definitely want to talk about too, is because the FBI agent's correct. Defensive wounds are going to be here on the hands, here on the forearms, depending on the position of the victim. It could be on the legs, right? And so they didn't even go into detail about that, right? So the way the chief answered questions leads me to believe that they're looking at additional people, because if they were extremely confident, I think this press conference would have went totally different. Totally different. They're under a lot of stress. They're doing a great job as far as, you know, obviously there's, you know, it's about 19,000 tips, you know, over 300 interviews. I think they're doing good. You know, if you guys watch my original stream, I talked about the family. You know, one of the parents, one of the victims' families have been very vocal in the news, and I think has not been a good look. They've been very impatient. Insulting the police department and how they're carrying out the investigation. Why? Because the police weren't giving them information that they felt like or deserved they needed to know. That entitlement and that arrogance that they displayed was very, very embarrassing. And it's a slap in the face to the other family members. It's like, hey, listen, you're not the only parents that have lost, their child. Please respect the process. Going on television, doing interviews, leaking information, saying things, making accusations, dragging other students, dragging people, just because you feel like they might be involved. And again, that's what this whole case was about. A lot of people with their feelings, throwing out names. And this, I can only imagine just how uneasy a lot of people were. A lot of people had to go on social media and make statements saying, hey, you guys are accusing me. I didn't do anything. Listen, it was madness, man. It was complete madness. But let me get into some of these questions. I'm curious to know what you guys think. Shout out to you. Dwayne says, question, why is this happening on the regular? This has shades of Dahmer. Enough is enough. It's almost 2023. Society is on a downward spiral. Society is on a downward spiral. It seems like every day there's a lack of morality, just leaving this country as a whole. There's a lack of love. There's a lack of unity. And people are obsessing themselves with material things and obsessing themselves with fame and fortune and just doing a lot of sinful things in order to validate their existence. And it's sad, it is. And thank God we do have people who do have good hearts that do move with integrity. Shout out to those who serve the community in all different capacities, because they are out here to try to bring some sense of balance. And I know on my channel, I talk about law enforcement here all the time, try to bring some insight to the conversation. But truth be told, there are good people out here who want to defend and protect the peace and tranquility, right? You think about when this incident happened, who did people call? They called the police. Who's out here doing endless hours, nonstop? The police. They're doing this in order to try to bring peace. One thing that agent Jennifer Kofendorfer stated about how powerful being a public servant is. As an officer, one of the things that I really, really enjoyed, the most greatest feeling in the world, is being able to bring a person to justice, bring peace to a family or to an individual, bring justice and solve a crime, take somebody wicked off the streets, out of communities, and turn neighborhoods and communities around for the better. Unfortunately, when evil people feel like that they can't be held accountable, that's where anarchy and chaos starts to thrive. And it's the men and women who do these jobs and jobs like it, and the service of the public that make it possible, that we can go home, travel to and from, and have a deeper sense of peace. No, they can't protect us from all instances, but to know that there's someone who is willing to protect, willing to put their life on the line for you, I think it matters. We don't want to live in a society where evil gets to roam free without being held accountable. And I think what we're seeing today is the force that comes together in order to try to bring justice when people have been wronged. So that's a great question. Genesis 1, shout out to you, Genesis. One of my day ones right here. Question, why halt the crime scene cleanup? What could they be looking for? That's actually a really good question. This is the longest crime scene I've ever seen. This would be different if it was like some sort of a terrorist attack type of thing. But this is a crime scene, a lot of evidence. In my first stream, I talked about how, what this evidence might look like to give people a better understanding of how meticulous you have to be to actually comb through the evidence. I said this is equivalent to looking at, doing a investigation inside of an elevator. In an elevator, you have thousands of people who go in and out every single day, and it's littered with trace evidence. And so think of like a college dorm the same way. Like, this is a college home, a lot of people going in and out. There's probably DNA and stuff all over that's confusing. So you got to go through this elimination process of evidence. And so this was a very difficult case. You have 4 victims, which means possibly 4 different motives. It could have been one motive that was, the incident was interrupted by someone else. And so you got to piece everything together, and understanding who was killed first, how they were killed, in what manner, why, where. I mean, there's so much to answer. So I didn't like the way they handled the crime scene, to be completely honest. I think they didn't do it properly. They were finding evidence months, a month later. They removed the vehicles a month later. Like, there was just a lot of things that I think wasn't done properly per se, which could cause some issues with the crime scene being tainted. They had an outsider who found a glove outside of the house that was kind of next to a trash can. Little things like that can throw off an investigation, or have you chasing a rabbit's tail in the wrong direction. And so the better you preserve the crime scene, the easier it is to focus on the most important pieces of the investigation. And they're still just talking about stuff, but we'll go back in. They don't have anything that we don't have, because they didn't say nothing in this press conference. So they're going to be recapping the same thing they recap every single day. Any little thing that turns up, they got to talk about it. Hey, we heard that so-and-so sneezed in the crime scene, and they do a whole hour video about it. So, I'm not going to bore you guys with that. We're going to have a real conversation over here in reference to the evidence, what we do know, and talk about what to expect moving forward. So the stabbings. What things would I look for on the crime scene, you guys, if I'm investigating this? What do you look at? You look at how the DNA from each victim was transferred, right? We don't know if the suspect was covered. We don't know. And we don't know. We look at this gentleman here. They're talking about his background. As far as education, he's criminal justice through and through. He's in the he's doing the PhD program. Like, he's centered around criminal justice, so he has some type of knowledge or understanding as some processes, depending on what he studied. Maybe he has a fixation. He has a infinity for criminal justice, so meaning he probably watches a lot of shows. He's done research, so that says a lot. That can definitely mean a lot, depending on how this whole thing unfolds. But if we talk about the simple piece as far as the victim stabbings and how they figure it out, how they would figure it out, a lot of people don't realize that evidence moves with the crime. So, for example, if they want to find out who was stabbed first, well, if it's one person who committed this crime and it's one knife that was used, then based on whose DNA was mixed with whose body at the time of the murder, will let you know kind of what stage of the attack happened, right? What stage did this person was stabbed, and so forth and so on. Meaning, we know that two of the victims were in the bed together, and another two in another room. And so, okay, well, who got stabbed first, and so forth and so on. You can tell by how much blood from one victim is on the knife, or which blood was mixed in with another victim, so forth and so on. So I don't know. I'm curious to see. I'm really anxious, and again, I'm very disappointed in this press conference. But all we could do is just kind of wait until he gets here. He probably won't be here again. They said possibly Tuesday, so it'll be next year before we even hear anything. He should have been extradited immediately under the cover of night and brought here ASAP to Idaho. Question: do you think they came out now so they can build more of a case before the hearing? No, I think they came out as soon as they had a lucky break in the case. I think they were just tired of probably being hounded by the media, hounded by the family. I think they were just, as soon as they got something solid, they're like, shit, oh, let's let it release it. Release it. And this didn't have to be a press conference. It could have just been a statement to the media. Hey, we just made an arrest of a potential suspect in this crime. We have evidence that links him to the crime, and so forth and so on. Here's the affidavit of the warrant. One count of burglary, one count of murder. This investigation is still ongoing. We can't release any further information at the time. This is who the individual is. This is where he lived at. This is where he was located. And that's it, and then you answer a couple questions and you're done. You don't offer to do a press conference and then you don't give the people nothing. You didn't give the people anything. It was a waste of time. It's a waste of time because waiting 2 more days wouldn't have made a difference, right? It's been 2 months that people believe that this should have been solved, after the first 48, right? From watching that. So I think they just were ready I know they were just ready to just kind of get it over with. Like, let's give them something. Let's absolutely just give them something so they can get off of our back. Teresa, thank you for your comment. You guys, if you have a comment, put a Q in front of your question, so I know that you're asking the question. We'll answer. If they do not have the weapon, how difficult is it to convict? It's not necessarily difficult to convict. People have been convicted with a lot less. Again, depends on how good your attorney is. Depends on his connection to the victims, and it depends on what kind of DNA they have at the scene. That's going to really determine a lot, because a lot of this could be circumstantial and it's not strong enough. You can have the killer in your grasp, but you can't prove it. The murder weapons is very important. It's very, very important. But if you can't connect the pieces, it's no good. It's not what you know, it's what you can prove. I've had cases where I knew this person was the offender, but couldn't prove it. And they would laugh in your face too. When you have a career criminal, they'll look at you and be like, yeah, what you gonna do about it? You can't prove it. Not having, murders get solved without having the murder weapon, but that's a key piece of evidence. What evidence could they use to link him? His cell phone, right? But again, if he lives in the area, so it wouldn't be uncommon for him to be there, right? If he knows them, or if he doesn't know them at all, then they got him, right? They got him, because then who do you know that lives in that house? Who do you know that lives on that campus? You go to another college campus that's 10 minutes away, but allegedly there was some type of event that was there that a lot of people were coming from out of town to attend. That's why developing the motive is so important. We don't know what evidence was found on his computer, what evidence is found on his phone. Is he a stalker, right? And things of that nature. Like, we don't really know. So based on what evidence they have, it'll be a lot easier to link him to the crime per se. But without the murder weapon, the murder weapon is like a slam dunk. But at the same time, if you don't have it, there's still a way to prosecute with that. So do serial killers often keep their weapons as souvenirs? Depends on what type of serial killer you're dealing with. Because sometimes they might not, what if the serial killer used forms of like strangulation? Sometimes what serial killers end up doing is they might keep a piece of maybe like a keepsake from their actual killing and things of that nature. And so not always. Perfect example of that would be, I guess Jeffrey Dahmer, right, is a good one. He had multitude of weapons that he used to kill his victims. It wasn't like a sole tool that he used specifically all the time. He was cutting people up and so on and so on, right, mutilating the bodies, but it wasn't like he was hitting people over the head. He was seducing people and kind of getting them over into his home and drugging them and things like that. So it wasn't like a straight out attack, an assault. It was more of a, I'm going to seduce them, get them comfortable and so on, and then take advantage of them. But these are great questions. I was shocked that the murder weapon was not left at the scene, which let me know that this was a planned attack. Why do I say that? Because if this was random, like they were fighting, like there was a fight that broke out, or there was a heated argument, it was in the moment, right? It was like a crime of passion. A lot of times the killer is so distraught that they drop everything, they panic, they leave evidence all over the place, and they just try to just kind of like get out of the area. And a situation like this where I didn't see any, and I didn't hear of any evidence outside the house, right? Like they didn't notice any footprints, any blood stains. They didn't see anything that was left behind. So it was the killer was very meticulous, very meticulous about everything. I talked about a case that I had, a murder. It was a quadruple homicide here in Atlanta. And what I remember is that the killer, after he stabbed and cut the throat of his entire family, And one thing I remember about that is when we found him about a mile away from the house, he had no blood on him. And what we later learned is that he actually cleaned himself up in the house before he left, you know? And so again, we don't know how long the killer was actually in the home, and so forth and so on, and whether or not he cleaned up afterwards. Again, the police have not given us anything. There are things they could have given us that would not have hurt the case completely, you know. So, but you know, they did what they did. So let's run back here because I'm curious to know. I'm curious to know what they're talking about now, and then I'm gonna get back onto you guys' questions. I see the questions coming in, but let's hear what they're talking about. I'll get back to this.
Hopefully now, if we have Peter, Zoom is, it's Zoom.
I can hear you.
Peter Tragos, the lawyer, friend of the program here on WFLA Now and #KJB. Peter, thanks so much for joining us. Where are you joining us from? Are you skiing?
I'm up in the mountains here in North Carolina, so I'm dealing with it the best we can. But I'm happy to be here, man. This is a wild spot to be in right now for the University of Idaho before they get the students back. The timing was, I think, something that they think was a major positive and a major benefit as far as the safety of the students and moving in the right direction in a case that a lot of people feared was going cold.
Peter, I don't want to, repeat a lot of these things if you know them already, but are you kind of up to speed?
Yes.
Okay. Because we have, of course, the first degree murder warrant. We have the felony burglary charge, which, we learned about from this press conference as well. We learned that there's no bond, that he has made his first court appearance, and that he can either waive or Idaho prosecutors are going to have to initiate extradition, and that there's a hearing for that on Tuesday. Let me just kind of welcome you in, and you can speak to whatever you have found to be most fascinating up to this point.
Yeah, to me, it's really interesting in this process. People are asking, how quickly do we think the process is going to get started? How quickly is he going to go to trial? Will there be cameras in the courtroom? Well, the first step really is this extradition process. And if he doesn't waive it and they have to initiate it at the prosecutor's office in Idaho, it could create a major delay in the case. And the most interesting thing I found from the press conference itself was how many times they continued to ask for tips and they continued to ask for more evidence and more information about this suspect, now potential criminal defendant that's going to be charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder plus burglary, like you said. And to me, the fact that they're asking for so many tips, admitting that they don't have the murder weapon, as a criminal defense lawyer looking at this, that could mean maybe they don't have enough evidence to convict him beyond a reasonable doubt and prove these crimes at this point, which is not unusual. They have to have enough evidence for a probable cause affidavit and an arrest warrant, which is a different burden than beyond a reasonable doubt. But to me, looking at this case, maybe they don't have everything they need just yet to convict him. And they're continuing to ask for tips, which I think is great for anybody that may know this guy. It seems like a buddy or an ex-girlfriend or something that knows anything about this guy personally saying, I follow him on Instagram. I text with him. He was telling me he was going to Idaho every other weekend to meet with some girl, whatever it may be. That's the type of stuff it seems like they're looking for to get more information about him personally.
Now, as far as representation, look, he has just been apprehended, and whether or not he is going to look, what are the options? The options are he has his own representation, a lawyer that represents him as far as now this upcoming extradition push. There's also him being assigned a public defender, correct? Or look, 2022 has been an interesting year, and you know what I'm talking about as far as representing yourself. Are those the options that he has in front of him as far as now representation as this process plays out?
Private lawyer, he can hire whoever he wants, whoever he can afford. Public defender / court-appointed lawyer, or representing himself. Those are his 3 options. It sounds like we have an interesting element of this case, like he's a criminology or criminal justice master's studying for his PhD. So does he have more knowledge than the average person about this? We will see. Highly educated guy, it seems like at this point. So we could learn a lot about this process. And there was interesting, I saw on the court docket that there was a denial for the motion to set bond. I don't know if somebody actually filed the motion or asked the court to set a bond, or if that was a decision they already made. It seems like he's already talking to a lawyer at this point. So we'll kind of see what happens in that process.
Yeah. And I'm sure that, look, family members trying to rally to get him to the best legal representation possible. Peter, you have a hat on your head, but I'm going to say you're going to put this figurative hat on your head. If you are his attorney, what is your advice?
Don't say nothing.
I mean, yeah, my advice at this point, if I was representing this guy and he told me he didn't do it or whatever it may be, you're not saying anything.
Yep.
You're not doing anything. I would say I'm feeling like they don't have enough evidence to convict you at this point.
Yep.
The white Elantra they can prove was there. I don't really know what connection that has to the murder, as opposed to it was at a certain place and a certain time. That's not enough to convict somebody for murder, in my opinion. His DNA was at a house that all we heard was how there was DNA layered everywhere and how difficult it was in this case to get the DNA. Hundreds of students went in and out of that house.
Exactly.
He could have just been one of the students from a university 20 minutes away that ended up at a party at this house.
Yep.
Like all of the other kids that were there. We saw the video of a noise complaint. I don't know if you guys watched it on this channel, but there was a video of a noise complaint where none of the people that even lived at this house were there during that party. He could have been a kid at that party. We don't necessarily know how they're connecting the dots with this evidence or what his connection is to the victims yet. So at this point, we're doing nothing on the criminal defense side and seeing if they can gather enough evidence to actually prove that he was the one that committed these crimes. And did he commit them alone? That was an interesting question of the press conference that, in my opinion, the police officer said, yes, we think this is the only guy, without actually saying that, right? He didn't answer the question,
No, he didn't.
but he did say, we got the guy that did this. The community should feel safe. We should still be vigilant, of course, about our surroundings and protecting ourselves. But at this point, we think we got the guy that did this.
Let's talk about extradition. Really big. And look, folks, hashtag HJB lawyer, you know, we are going to be getting to your questions and comments. And Peter, I'm going to try to keep you for 15 minutes. Am I getting greedy?
No, that's perfect.
All right, good. All right. Because look, vacation. I get it.
Hey, man.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I know.
What did he say? I think this is exactly what I was talking about. People are trying to throw things around and they don't understand how the process works at all. You guys, he was saying, oh, he was in the white Elantra. Doesn't mean anything, you guys. It absolutely doesn't mean anything when you're talking about a murder case. If you can't connect, you don't have the nexus of how everything flows and connects. You don't have anything. The fact that they have an arrest warrant is good, but listen, it doesn't mean until we see what that evidence is, you guys, you know, again, it's still innocent until proven guilty. You know, I want to say what's very interesting about this entire case is, again, about the evidence. You know, how is this evidence connecting him? And can an attorney make a strong argument to basically dispute whatever evidence is being thrown? Well, he has a white Elantra. We've seen the white Elantra speeding from the scene. Okay, yeah, he was there visiting some friends on the college campus. They had a party. His DNA was at the scene, blah, 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 in the house. And just like the defense attorney just said, he said that doesn't mean anything, you know, depending on what that evidence is. It would have to be the strongest evidence that they'd have to have about his DNA at the scene would have to be his blood. Would have to be his blood. Anything outside of his blood is not going to work. You know, not going to work. Has to be his blood. It has to be from maybe under the fingernails of one of the victims, but even that's pushing it, because then the counter argument could be, hey, you know, hey, I met her at the party, right? These girls were out, you know, people are at the party. Depends on who has the see, and here's another thing, there's 4 victims. It depends on who his DNA was actually on. You know, I mean, that's another thing you got to look at. Say his DNA was found on the male, right? And if his DNA was found on the male, maybe they got into a scuffle. Maybe they, you know, they're slap boxing or playing around, and his DNA, he's like, hey, yeah, I know him. This is a good friend. Like, there's so many things you could say to kind of really circumvent around the fact that you are, you know, you're not the killer. You know, so until we find out exactly what the evidence is, the DNA, what they're suggesting is, you know, then they won't know how to actually fight that, right? How to actually defend that. So that's why he's saying, as a defense attorney, he said, you're not saying anything, because it's the state's job to bring the information and say, this is what we have against your client, right? And then you start creating your actual defense as to how you're going to defend against the state. The state has to prove. The state has to prove you're innocent until proven guilty. You have to prove that I am the killer. And then what evidence do you have to support that? If you don't have the murder weapon, right? You have a vehicle leaving the scene that's not good enough. You got my DNA at the scene. Depending on what that DNA is, don't mean nothing, right? I said in my last stream about how what this DNA could look like. What if it was saliva? What if it was sperm? What if it was blood? Okay, that could mean, and that could have gotten there a multitude of different ways. It doesn't necessarily mean that he's the killer. It puts him at the scene. Now you got to prove that I killed them. So there's just a lot, and again, we've watched them drag hundreds of people through the mud behind this case trying to speculate. So let me go back to some of the questions, because you guys are asking some really, really, really great questions. And let me see, where did I leave off at? Let's try this. Okay, the common sense expert said they mentioned burglary. Was it burglary gone wrong? If so, I can't see this guy taking out 4 people. No, I don't think burglary is just a charge because he entered the home, the dwelling, without permission, right? He entered it. What they're saying is, based on what they provided, burglary is a charge given to someone who gains unlawful entry into a residence, or a well, it could be others, but gain entry into this home unlawfully with the intent to commit a crime, a felony. If that's how it reads in Georgia. It's usually pretty similar in other states as well, but it's unlawful entry into a home. And so that's why he's charged with that. Was it a burglary gone wrong? I doubt it. I think, well, I guess we don't know, right? We don't know. If he doesn't know these students, then this could be something as simple as a peeping Tom who, or a peeping Tom who's evolved into, a killer. This could be a serial killer who's killed before and is just now getting caught. I mean, here's the other thing. We don't know how they connected his DNA, right? If he doesn't know them at all, right? If he doesn't know anybody at all, you also have to then wonder, how do they track his DNA and how they figured out it was him? Is it because, his DNA has been in the system from other crimes, right? Like, I mean, there's so much information until they got to at least give us the information whether or not he is known by this group that lives in that house. Like, until we get that piece, it's so hard to try to even speculate what his connection is to them. But again, like I told everybody, they're going to be completely surprised by this. Completely surprised. Why did I say that in the beginning of the first stream that I did? Is because it wouldn't have taken this long to find the killer. It wouldn't have taken this long. When you have a spouse, a husband and wife, and then one of the spouses wind up dead, the primary suspect is the other spouse. You start from there and you work your way out. This is a college campus, college students. You start with the closest people and you work your way out. And people had alibis. And the fact that it drug out so long that it did, I was like, oh yeah, there are people going to be surprised, because there's no reason why this should have taken this long to solve this. So great question, but that's why he was charged with burglary, assuming that there aren't others. And when he made that utterance about, did you get anybody else? That could have meant that you got the wrong person, or I wasn't the only one in there, or I didn't do it. Maybe I was a part of the people who did it, but it wasn't me, right? There's so many things that you could take from that statement alone. It could mean that he does know. Maybe he did do it. Maybe he didn't. He was there. He was present. Getaway driver. A lot could be said about that. His understanding as to criminology and things like that. It means a little bit of something, maybe nothing at all. I told people about this. They'd be shocked about how this would turn out. I said this particular situation, they wouldn't be surprised if it was something similar to a Dexter. I said that on the last stream. What was the interesting thing about Dexter? Dexter, was the killer, and he was helping the police solve crimes that he killed. He was manipulating the crime scene. I said that just because of how, they didn't speak on any obvious evidence that the suspect left behind. I thought that was weird. for them not to mention some of the most obvious things that you would mention. Hey, we have a footprint, we have blood smear, we have fingerprints, we have this. They didn't say anything. They didn't say anything, which I thought was very, very unusual. Mylu, shout out to you. She says, question, does everybody remember Richard Jewell? How his life was ruined by the FBI? Yes. Perfect example. Perfect example. If you guys are not familiar with that story, it was a reference to the bomber. And they got the wrong person. They got the wrong person because they believed he most likely could have been the guy, because he was antisocial, he was awkward, he was socially awkward, and a lot of different things. He kind of fit the mold. Oh, he wants to be a cop so bad. He found the bomb. I bet he planted it there. Look at his eyes, right? The truth is in the eyes. And so when you make these type of statements and you don't have any facts to back it up, you guys, they completely destroyed his life, you know? And the media drug him through the mud, and people didn't care, you know? And so again, this is the perfect example that you have to be careful when you look at him and you say, oh, look at his eyes. He has the eyes of a killer. What? Some of y'all never even seen a killer in your life. And a lot of times you don't know a killer until he kills you. So when people make statements like that, it drives me crazy. I have fought people who tried to kill me. I know what a killer looks like. Someone who will do anything to try to get away. A lot of you guys don't know what you're talking about. You know, I know a lot of people who got eyes like this. Like, you know, it's weird when people make statements like that as if they just know. And we got to talk about the tarot card reader lady who was like, hey, listen, it's the professor. And the professor of that college is now, you know, trying to sue her for defamation of character because she put out a lot of information saying that she was involved in the murder, which we don't know we don't know anything, right? We don't know anything. But when you make a guaranteed factual statement like that, this is the killer because the spirits of the tarot card told me. She's out here throwing around Pokemon cards talking about, you know, these spirits are talking to her, telling her who the killer is. Now, listen, I understand people mess with that juju stuff. I get it. But you still got to be careful when you start making those type of statements. Let's see. Bernice says, did you catch what the suspect is majoring in? Yep, it was criminology, guys. The same thing that I majored in. I majored in criminology, and then I had my graduates in public administration. So yeah, and I'm well aware about criminology, and it's studying the mind, right? It's like it's essentially like criminal psychology. You know, theories about crime and things of that nature and why people do it. I loved the class. It was a very, very interesting course that I took. So yeah, very interesting to find out that he's a PhD student. If so, is that something to consider when assessing the suspect's ability to minimize evidence? Absolutely. Absolutely. Because a lot of times too, you know, not only that, think about this. A lot of you guys who watching this stuff, you're not, you know, public servants. A lot of you aren't police officers or things like that, or, you know, judges and things like that. But what you are, though, you're fascinated with law and order, right? You're fascinated with crime shows and crime drama. So even though you might not have the experience, there's a fascination there where you're learning from what you see on television. And believe it or not, one thing that you see on television is like, hey, you know, you have right to remain silent. Hey, your evidence can be used against you. Hey, your DNA, your hair sample. So even though you might not have the training, you know enough to know what police are looking for to help solve crime. And, you know, one thing that even that attorney just said, he's like, if he was my client, what would I tell him? I'm telling him, shut the hell up. You know, shout out to TLA. He's like this all the time, right? His photos, he always has his finger. Because he's telling his clients not to speak, because that's evidence when you say something. Even spontaneous utterance can be allowed in trial, right? Because it's like, hey, I as an officer and investigator, I didn't ask him anything. He said that on his own free will, even after I Mirandized him. I told him he had the right to remain silent. I said all those things. He made a spontaneous utterance on his own. That can be used against him in trial, right? So him having that knowledge absolutely will matter. It makes a difference, assuming that he is the actual offender. I'm super anxious to know what this probable cause looks like, to be completely honest. Great question though. Victorious Love, did you hear about the research paper he was doing on Reddit? No, I did not. Drop it in the chat. I'm curious about that. I will pull up something I do have of him. Oh, matter of fact, no, I do have it. I do have it. Let me pull it up right now, you guys. Let me see. Since you brought it up, I do have it. I meant to mention it, and I just kind of honestly just slipped my screen. Slipped my mind. Thank you, Victorious, for reminding me. You guys, let's look at this in reference to the research criminology student. Let's see what it says. This is something he put out on Reddit, I guess, maybe for his PhD. I don't have a PhD, so I don't know. It's probably some type of assignment he has to do in order to get his PhD thing. I don't really know how that works, but I can assume. What they're saying about him here is he was a graduate student from Washington State University. It's 15 minutes from Moscow, where the incident occurred. Supposedly, his field research was criminology. Let me see. Research participations needed. He says, hello, my name is Bryan, and I'm inviting you to participate in a research project that seeks to understand how emotions and psychological traits. Sorry, guys, I don't think I can even highlight it so that you can see it better. Let me pull it. I think, you should be able to see pretty good. Psychological traits influence decisions making when committing a crime. In particular, this study seeks to understand the story behind your most recent criminal offense, with an emphasis on your thoughts and feelings throughout your experience. In this event, that your most recent offense was not one that led to a conviction. You may all still participate. Additional surveys are included after the open-ended section as to best understand your unique traits. The study should take about 15 to 20 minutes to fully complete. Your identity and all your answers to provide are completely confidential, and the link to the survey is also an anonymous link. This research has been approved by DeSales University IRB. Participants must be 18 years of age. If you opt to participate, you may terminate participation at any time for any reasons. If you have any questions, student investigator, please email student investigator Bryan Kohberger at BK5781 at dsales.edu. So apparently I guess he was trying to do a research study, which is very interesting. Again, what is he saying here? This study seeks to understand the story behind your most recent criminal offense. Why? I think this is interesting, right? With an emphasis on your thoughts and feelings throughout your experience. If you think about it, you guys, he's a criminology major. And so in criminology, it's the study of why people commit crime, right? The theories behind. I have a couple of my favorite theories of why people commit crime. And even though these particular ones that I like don't speak to all crime, but I specialize in burglary as well as fraud. Those are things that I was really passionate about. And so I stuck to theories that really, really spoke to those type of offenses. And so I think it's very interesting that he wants to get into the head and the mind of a criminal. With that being said, what does that say about him? That this gentleman's a very, very analytical person, very methodical, very well thought, and he's very into the mind, right? And so I think this is going to be very interesting as this unfolds. So I'm gonna have to look into this a little further, you guys. Probably in a second stream, we'll probably dive into this a little deeper. But I think it's very interesting. Understand how emotions and psychological traits influence decisions when committing a crime. That's what his research is about. I'm curious to know what you guys' thoughts on that is. And I think, again, that is a study. A lot of people say that, I used a lot of theories like the strain theory to explain a lot of criminal behavior. But depending on what you're explaining, what type of crime you're talking about, one theory might be more practical to address it than others. Depending on the motive will also allude to a better criminal theory to explain a person's actions as to what motivated them. So with this, what he's trying to do here is, you know, if you're an individual and say you shoplifted, right? You were shoplifting candy or stuff or clothes from a department store, then he's saying when you committed that offense, what was going on in your life? What was going on in your mind at the time that motivated or inspired you to do that? How did you feel before? How did you feel afterwards? As a way to get into the window of a person's mind to determine, okay, what are the motivating factors? What are the traits that you exuded in that moment that inspired you to be a criminal? And essentially, that's kind of what I got from this, his research that he wanted to do, right? Again, he wants to understand how emotions and psychological traits influence people into being a criminal. You know, people say this is not a DNA thing. It's the in the moment thing, right? It's the feeling that you get, right? It's the empowerment. It's the need to fill a void. It's the need to feel complete, right? Why are you doing this? And you know, honestly, I've interviewed hundreds of people, criminals, offenders from a multitude of different types of crimes. And again, their motivations are always different. Their motive is always different, depending on what you're talking about. I've handled cases from all 7 deadly sins. And when you talk to criminals, their motivations before and after will blow your mind, will absolutely blow your mind. So I think that is a very, very interesting student project, to say the least, especially now turning around and seeing that he is a suspect in this quadruple homicide. One would argue that we definitely want to know if he is in fact the offender. We want to know what his emotional and psychological traits were that influenced him to commit this crime, if he is said offender of this quadruple homicide. So this will be very interesting, you guys. Very, very interesting. What are your thoughts on that? What are your thoughts on that? And then I'm gonna get back to these questions. Let me see. Drop this down. How long is that depends on the court. That depends on the court. It's not unusual for them to release a crime scene, and it's not unusual for people to go back to a crime scene. This is a very unique situation because it's within a college town inside of a home. To be completely honest with you, you know, some crime scenes can be outside, so it's nothing to go back. You can't maintain the blood stains and splatter and all that kind of stuff outside on a parking lot or on a street, on a curb, right? What people do is they'll send a jury down and look at the area. Even after they clean everything up, they might still walk through the exact same house, but then they'll have the photos, they'll have the videos. Best believe the crime scene technicians took extensive videos to where you can actually relive everything from the room. They'll hand out photos and say, hey, in this room, this is what it looked like. But I don't know why they put the hold on the crime scene. They should have left all the stuff. You know, they gave those stuff, gave a lot of the victim stuff back to the family. You know, I was saying in the last stream that honestly, you know, you don't release anything until you release everything. There was no need to do that. But I don't know what the judge is doing when they put a hold on that at the moment. So that's going to be interesting. Let me see. Shout out to Lisa. Thank you for your question. Are they experienced in this type of crime in the community? No, they're not. I think from last I heard, they had, I think in Idaho, they had 7, if I'm not mistaken, I don't want to misquote, they had about 7 murders for the year. I don't know if it's that small town or if that's it might be that town, right? Moscow handled 7 murders, if I'm not mistaken, that police department, 7 murders for the entire year. Whereas here, like in Atlanta, we had 7 murders within the last 2 weeks, right? So you can imagine the type of training and experience we have on this side when you live in a big metropolitan city where you have a lot of murder. Hell, we just had 3 kids get shot and killed, you know, and the kids were the killers, you know. So we're not a stranger to homicides, unfortunately, on this side of the fence. And because of that, you do investigate differently. You move faster. You move with more confidence. You're not thrown off. You're not, you know, I see a dead body. I'm not like, oh my God, I can't believe No, I'm just like, okay, let's do it. Let's break the case down. Let's get to it. Who are we interviewing? Who the primary? Who's most like? I'm looking at body. I'm looking at attitude. I'm looking at interviews. I'm looking at the evidence. The evidence is telling me the story, not the people. I'm connecting the story with the evidence. You trace and track the evidence, and that's where the truth resides, not in what people say, right? And so again, it's a tricky process, but yes, 7 homicides for the year, and a lot of other places you talking about 7 homicides for a week. You know, big difference, big difference. Bernice again, how do we get the real Nathan Daly as a guest correspondent on the news station? I would love to. I would love to. I'm down. You know, I think a lot of people are missing a good perspective from people who have the experience. And a lot of times they bring up people who they bring up people sometimes that have good experience, and sometimes people who don't. As you saw there, I was very disappointed with the FBI agent talking about I'm looking in the eyes of a killer. You know, he's cold and empty. It's like, come on, you know. You just got to be more mindful when you're having these conversations, and you got to bring people back to reality. But no, I would love to do something like that actually. You know, the opportunity presents itself, I'm definitely going to jump on it. Definitely. So let me scroll up just in case I missed some comments here, some questions. Let's see. If anybody wants to come up and you know, want to throw some comments out, 5 minutes, I definitely would love to hear from you and get your thoughts. I will drop a copy. I'll drop the link to come up. If you want to come up and give your thoughts, you're more than welcome. We'll comb through a little bit of this, and then I'll see. I don't think they're even talking much about it. Let's see. Matter of fact, let's see what they're talking about on here, and then I'm gonna get back to the. Share this tab instead. I'm gonna get back to the stream to kind of find out what they're talking about. Shout out to you, Bernice. Yeah, I definitely would love to do something like that. I think that'll be really dope. Dwayne, it's so we'll try. Let me see. Let me see. Yeah. See, this is why, and this is Tony brings up a good point. This is one of the things that's always an issue when people, you know, throw information out, and you know, it can throw the case off. They're looking, and the car was actually 2015 model. Let me see. We got this question here. Why didn't they say anything about evidence if it was evidence that linked him to the crime scene? How can it hurt? Yeah, that's what I was irritated about. There was no reason why they couldn't have suggested evidence. You know, I know they were talking about because he's not in custody in Idaho, so because of the law, the way the law set up. Honestly, that was the first time I heard of that. That's only because, you know, I've only worked in my state, you know, so I wasn't really aware that was a thing. But they're saying that's the thing. And if that's the thing, they should have just waited until he was in custody in Idaho to share with everybody what the evidence is. When he gets to Idaho, we will be able to get the probable cause, right? How they linked him to these particular charges, how they linked him to burglary. For burglary, they got to be able to show evidence that he entered the home unlawfully. There's a multitude of ways they could show that. Doesn't mean that makes him the killer. They're charging him with murder without the murder weapon. How can they do that? It depends on what type of evidence they have. Yeah, when I say I'm anxious because I'm curious to know, without the murder weapon, you know, how are you putting this together? So I'm very, very curious. Great question. I see you, Dwayne. I'll bring you up shortly. Let me see, make sure I go through here. So I'm missing any questions. I'll just see your comment, Dwayne. Let me hear what they're saying real quick. I'm gonna bring you up, Dwayne. Let me see where they're at with this.
Did he leave his phone on, and did he leave it traceable? Bagged, #HJB. Will footage of the arrest be released to the public? Look, if there's body camera video and it's FOIA'd,
eventually,
yeah. I mean, I would imagine that. But look, it's not going to be released until it's cleared for release, and basically, as we know, it's
Wow.
when it's no longer part of an active investigation.
Which
So
would be
if
when
you're
it's
expecting
over
to
with.
get the
No
video
time soon.
soon, it's possible, but it's not very.
If they release any of the body camera footage, you guys, it will only probably be a portion of it. It may not be the whole part. It might be edited just simply to keep the most important evidence out and wait for trial. You won't see the full body cam footage until trial. If they allow cameras in the courtroom, which I absolutely believe they will, because the type of case this is, everybody and their mama is going to want to know about it. So this is definitely going to be something that will be actually televised, in my personal opinion. I don't see them not being able to have this case and it not be televised. All right, Dwayne, I'll bring you up. Let me drop this. Yeah, he has DNA matching the scene, but we don't know what kind of DNA that is. And again, him depending on that DNA might not even mean anything. It might not even be strong enough. You got to remember, we're talking about, this isn't like, the problem with this case is, like I said before, it's like working a murder scene in an elevator, right? In an elevator. Could you imagine everybody, you're allowed to have your DNA in an elevator because, so depending on what the DNA is, or what they found in there, they didn't even speculate. I mean, they didn't even present what type of DNA, whether it was blood, semen, sweat, right? Hair follicles, fingernail. I mean, damn, skin. Like they didn't say anything. He's in a college house where they party and shit all the time. They're in and out, playing, going back and forth. His DNA could be lawfully there. If it's say it's semen, right? Then you find out he was in a relationship with, maybe he's messed around with one of the victims prior to the incident. You can justify the presence of that evidence, and so, and not saying that that's the case at all. Just want to be clear. I'm not saying that's the case, but I'm just saying that this is how things have to get ruled out when you're making an investigation. There was a guy that people are accusing near the food truck, and people were saying, "Hey, it's him. It's the guy. This is the guy. I bet it's him." Blah blah blah. He had to go on TikTok and on YouTube and clear his name. And he was like, "Hey, I bumped into one of the girls inside the club, inside the party house, wherever we were at. When you bump in, his sweat could have got on her clothes. Here's the thing: we don't know if these girls, if the victims were killed in the clothes they were wearing outside before getting home. Excuse me. We don't know if they took a shower, right? If they were in their pajamas. We don't even know what they had on. We don't know if they were wearing the same things outside that they wore inside. That has a lot to do with a lot of things. They were around other people. So a lot could have been on them. We just don't know. And depending on what they use, will determine how his defense team or his attorney, what his defense is going to be for that evidence. But great question. All right, Dwayne, bringing you up.
What's up, son?
Hey, what's going on, brother? How you doing?
No, it's been a minute since I talked to you,
sir.
dog.
Yes.
What's happening?
Man, nothing much, man. Trying to keep up with all the drama in society.
I can't believe it. What the hell is going on with people?
Man, I don't know,
crazy.
man. I'm always saying that society seems like it's getting worse and worse every year.
Yeah.
But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts in reference to this press conference? And what are your thoughts in reference to this case as a whole?
Well, I'm confused because it seems like a simple crime, right?
Yeah.
But this man allegedly killed 4 innocent people for no reason. I think, unfortunately, that's where society's going. It's going to get wild, dude. Not to be cynical, but I'm just saying, like, I sit and observe these things, right? I live in the A, I live in New York, the whole thing. But I've never seen anything such wild as what's happening right now, dude. It seems like anything goes.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think what a lot of people don't realize though is that there's gruesome homicides that take place around this country all the time,
every day.
And I've worked a couple myself, and I'm in one state, one city. You know, there are serial killers still at large in this country. There are serial killers who've been arrested recently. I mean, you know, the wickedness and the evilness that's pervasive throughout this country, throughout this world. There's too much of it. And it's senseless killing. I mean, we witnessed them at the school shootings, the one in Texas, right? We witnessed them the shooting out and at that grocery store, you know, where the guy he streamed it, you know, streamed the shooting and killed all those people in the grocery store. So it's like this is, you know, people are
Well, let
losing.
me ask you this, dude.
Mhm.
Why? Why is this happening right now?
Honestly,
I've been to a lot. You've been to a lot. But what the hell is going on? Is this a plan to destroy us as people, black, white, whatever? You think so, or
honestly,
am
I
being
don't.
too-
I think, you know, I think this is a reflection of our society. This is an absolute reflection of our society. It's a reflection of our culture as Americans. People are losing their mind. People can't handle the pressures of life. We have dumbed people down. We have weakened our children. They are
I'm pretty
being
sure COVID didn't help.
Nah, of course COVID didn't help,
Yeah,
right?
man.
But you think about there's so much, there's such a concerted effort, you know, from a capitalist standpoint to where, you know, you got to think we're being poisoned with our food, the air, the water
Everything.
we drink, you know, the food we
Disgusting.
eat. We don't know how these things, you know, social media, you know, they're finding out things every day about stuff that we use on an everyday basis that's having an impact on our mind, on our health, on our wellness. You know, just keeping up, people trying to keep up with society and the demands of society is psychologically destroying us, right? People are snapping. You know, we have a rise in mental health cases. People don't want to address the issues. Kids are getting bullied. People getting bullied. You know, people feel like that because they're because they're unhappy with their life, they believe that they have to take that out on others. You have
Yeah.
kids who are being raised in broken homes,
That
parents who are not.
projection thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, so there's so much, man. There's so much. We have a deterioration of society and moral values, and a lot of these things start from the home. You know, when you start looking at and dissecting and tracing things back, you see the homes are broken. You know, and that has a lot to do with a lot of things. A lot of the most recent mass shootings we have, when you look at where the kids or the young adults or grown adults came from, you're like, okay, well, what were
Sure.
you guys not paying attention? You know?
How about that? How about that? Listen, I came from a broken home. You understand what I'm saying? Wicked broken home. My father was a Vietnam vet. My mother was I think I told you, she was a CO in New York. You understand what I'm saying? So I understand my aunt is a, you know, superior officer in NYC. But I tell you this, man, like everybody feels the effect of the insanity that's going on right now, dude. Like look, weird stuff. I'll curb my tongue. Weird stuff has happened throughout my lifetime, but I can imagine what you cats, younger cats, are going through. It's scary. But nonetheless, thank you, Nathan, for bringing the forum.
Thank you.
Because I swear, nobody talks about this shit.
No,
Nobody does.
They don't. People don't talk.
you the best.
People don't talk about. You know, unfortunately, I'm not ashamed to talk about it. I've seen a lot in my profession. People don't want to talk about the psychological, the spiritual significance of a lot of things as well. You know, we try to. A lot of people like to dance around that, but the reality is it's a real thing. I've seen some stuff that I can't explain. I've
I know
seen
you
some
did,
things
dog.
that'll make you either turn atheist or fall
Yeah.
in love with God or
It's that
completely.
simple.
It's just that simple. You know,
Yeah, man.
it'll either show you either hate God, fall in love with him, or believe he doesn't exist.
Either you love or you don't. That's the facts of the matter.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I've known the hardest thugs. Listen, I used to roll BMF in Atlanta, big time. I thought it was a wonderful thing. But listen, cuz FBI came in and said, they
Right.
used to wreck the place. The
Yep.
FBI. It was like, oh my God. But can you blame brothers for doing what they do? We got to protect ourselves no matter what. So I'm hoping there'll be a new dawn, a new day, as where we can collectively build up our brain power, if you will, to be better people.
Right.
We have it. It's us. Everybody. Oh, I can go on, but everybody borrows from us.
Yes.
Facts.
Hey man, there's a lot to share.
That's
Listen,
why I
Dwayne.
appreciate you, Nate. Because
I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for coming up,
you're
man.
doing it.
Welcome anytime to
Real
come up.
talk.
Welcome anytime.
Thank you, brother.
All right. Have a good one.
All right. Peace out, man.
Peace out. Well said. I mean, shout out to you, Dwayne. Listen, you guys, drop the link if you want to come up. Not much left on this conversation. Unfortunately, they didn't give us anything. There's nothing for us to build off of, unfortunately. But I will say there is a lot going on this country, So we do have to bring that love back, that unity back, man. Unfortunately, we live in times now where I see people using temporary methods, or I would say permanent methods, to address temporary problems. We believe that taking a life is the only way to solve a problem. So things have gotten bad, you guys, and things have gotten out of control, and it's very, very sad. Very tragic, very tragic. Before I get into that, let me give a special thank you. Thank you to Victoria for becoming a member of the channel. I really, really appreciate that. To all my members on the channel, you guys have been with me from the beginning as this channel has been growing. We're coming to the end of the year. This would be exactly 1 year since I started my channel. Very, very proud of it, you guys. I'm very, very grateful to have the support that I have. It means a lot to me. We have a lot of difficult conversations over here, and we don't shy away from the conversations. Over here, we do facts over feelings, and we talk about things that people are afraid to talk about. I give you a perspective as a 13-year law enforcement veteran. You guys, I've experienced a lot. I've worked in a lot of different areas. I've accomplished a lot. Very blessed to be alive, you guys, to be completely honest. And so very, very grateful for your support. This is interesting. I actually didn't even plan on doing a stream until next year. I was really excited, but this came up. I thought this was going to be a very interesting moment to find out what's going on, because of this case has been just so heavy in the news. Now, to me, this is tragic, and my prayers goes out to the family and the friends and the people involved, even that community, the college. You guys, this is difficult. This is a very small town area. This is not something that they experience with all the time. I hate the fact that I've gotten so used to death, in this profession, that it's not that I'm not emotionally phased, but I just see things differently because I've had to investigate so many. And so, I come into a scene with a very different type of perspective, very, very clear perspective, with the desire to find the offender, right? The perpetrator. And so I understand that this is a very, very difficult time for the community, for the police department. Thank God they had over 60 FBI agents helping out, state troopers, and so forth and so on. A lot of people lending their support and resources to ensure that they are making a solid case. I have no doubt in my mind that this suspect is connected in some form or fashion. Whether or not he is the actual killer, we do not know. And even if he was, you still have to prove it in a court of law, right? And there have been killers that have walked. There are murders that are still unsolved, you guys. They have to make sure they put together a solid case, an absolute solid case, and go from there. Victoria, thank you so much for joining the channel. I'm super excited to have you. Looking forward to you being a part of our conversations during our live stream. So welcome to the family again. Everybody, please welcome her to the family. welcome. Really appreciate it. And again, anybody want to come up? Anybody have any thoughts? Any questions? Anybody have any questions before we close out? Any questions before we close out? I will, obviously, as you know, as soon as the affidavit shows up, I'm going to be all over it. We're going to be talking about it. Again, I'm so curious to see what they found, how they linked him. Is there more individuals? The cryptic statement he made is, did you arrest anybody else? It opens the door to a plethora of different theories and things of that nature. You're going to have a lot of people on YouTube looking really stupid right now. A lot of these sleuths, was what they call them, these wannabe detectives, right? Over here playing Blue's Clues on the internet, causing a lot of issues. And so, I think one of the biggest challenges that they need to face is they need to go back and they need to make apologies. They need to go back and they need to make apologies, you guys. They absolutely need to make apologies, because there was a lot of accusations being made and statements being made about, who the killer is. And Genesis said keyboard cops. Yes. Yeah, that's what we're gonna call them, you guys. Keyboard cops. A lot of that was going on, and you guys, if you don't understand how damaging that can be to a person's livelihood. People were being followed, people were being harassed, people were being threatened. It's too much, man. Like, you got to be careful. Like, this is not a game. And a lot of these YouTubers or content creators, they're out here accusing different people. There's power in these platforms. It's okay to speculate things within reason, right? It's okay to have discussions. Man, it's not okay to just make these flat out statements, accusations of truth, when you don't have any evidence to support it. Shout out to the tarot card reader. She was another one. I thought that was really interesting. She just basically said, listen, the spirits are talking to me. I know what's going on. The cards have told me who's responsible, right? So we don't know. But that person, the professor who was accused, definitely is going to press some, defamation charges against her. So, whew. Anyways, that's it, you guys. No, someone said, was the killer a student? No, the killer was not a student of that school. And we don't know if this person is even the killer. This person is a student of Washington. This person is a student of Washington State University, which is 10 minutes from Moscow. 10 minutes from Moscow. Victorious Love says, why choose to request it on Reddit and not on Inmate? I'm not sure what your question is on that one. Reddit, are you talking about I think someone just put up his research study that he was trying to do. I think someone just put it on Reddit, but I'm not sure what you're talking about. Why choose to request it on Reddit and not an Inmate? You got to rephrase that, Victorious. I'm not sure what you mean with that question. Yeah, he was a student at Pullman, which is 10 miles away. Okay, he's a criminology student. There goes her tarot card career. Okay. Yeah, he has a residence in PA, though. Might be his parents' house. That's where he was captured. Mm-hmm. Yep, that's what he was captured at his parents' house. Very interesting. We're not going to know. Honestly, we're back to square one. We're not going to know a damn thing until, to be completely honest, until he gets to Idaho. We're not going to know anything until he gets to Idaho at this point. That's kind of where we are with this entire thing. So where are we at, you guys? Recap. Conference was a waste of time. They told us absolutely nothing. We know that he's a suspect. We know that he's being charged with burglary, and we know he's being charged with first-degree murder. We don't know what evidence is linking him to those two charges, and we also don't know they don't know, they haven't found a murder weapon, but they were able to locate the vehicle, per the police chief. That is all we know. We know that he was located early this morning in Pennsylvania, and that they are in the process of trying to extradite him back to Idaho. Until he gets to Idaho, they are not allowed by law to share anything in reference to the affidavit, the warrant for his arrest. They can't share any of that information. So until then, we're not going to know what the probable cause was. What is the probable cause? The probable cause is the statement of evidence that links him to said actual crime, right? Meaning, so-and-so was charged with burglary. He unlawfully entered. Okay, well, how did you come across that? How did you define that? Based on this, and this how he committed this particular crime. So it'll be at least a brief synopsis as to what the evidence was linking him to. We know that there was no forced entry. So without there being no forced entry, how did he gain access? So there has to be something connecting him into the home. So I'm really curious to know. I believe he was lying in wait in the house already. If that's the case, he's giving me serial killer vibes. Unless he has a direct connection or link to the victims. If there's no direct link to the victims, I'm going with serial killer. There have been a lot of and here's the thing. He made a spontaneous utterance, which means he made a statement while he was already under I'm assuming after he was Mirandized. They should have Mirandized him the moment they made contact with him. And so I'm assuming that was made after he was Mirandized. If he made that utterance beforehand, it's still spontaneous. They might try to suppress it in court. We don't know. But suppress it during trial. We don't know how that's going to play out. All that'll have to come out in the body cam. But we don't know. And we don't know if there were additional. We don't know if the evidence at the scene suggests that there were multiple people. We don't know if he cleaned up the scene, cleaned up after himself to a certain degree to where he didn't leave any unique prints. His prints, they said his DNA was at the scene. Until we know what type of DNA, we don't really have much of anything to go off of. That DNA can come in the form of skin cells, saliva, blood, urine, hair follicles, any type of bodily fluids. And so outside of that, maybe a clothing article left behind. Then the question is, where was that DNA evidence found? On which victim? And based on that will determine how that evidence could be challenged during trial, right? Was it found on the ladies, on the female victims? Was it found on the male victim? And how did that evidence get there? What type of evidence is it? How did it get there? Is it possible could have gotten on the victims prior to them going to the house? If that's the case, that changes everything. So, there is, and based on how the evidence was secure at the time when it was obtained will also determine on how it can be challenged in court. So at this point in time, is this a slam dunk? No, it is not. Until we find out how strong the evidence is, you guys, this right now is just, it's just honestly, the case is just getting started. The case is just getting started. So that's where we are. That's where we are. It's going to be interesting. But we got a long way to go. We got an absolute long way to go. anyways, again, thank you guys so much. Shout out to you, Dwayne, for coming up. Thank you so much for all the questions. Great questions, you guys. Thank you so much to all my supporters. It means the absolute world to me. Again, special shout out again to all my members of this channel, and a special shout out to our new member, Victoria. Thank you so much, my dear. It is an honor to have you a part of this family. You're gonna like it here. Please get a chance to and I think I've seen you before, but please enjoy the catalog. We had a great conversation last night. It was crazy, but it was definitely a great conversation from start to finish. Listen, you guys, I'm gonna keep you up to date on this case, as you already know. As things come out, we will break this down, and when this goes to trial, we will be breaking that trial down absolutely, step by step, because we definitely want to stay on top of this. So other than that, you guys, listen, I appreciate you so much for all your support. Please keep the family in your prayers. Please lift up those officers and those who are investigating. The job, you guys, has just begun. This is round 2, and now trying to identify what's next on what needs to happen next. So you guys, that's it, man. I'm out of here. For real, happy New Year's to everyone. Please keep your families close, be safe, and I will see you guys in the new year. Unless something crazy happens, you won't see me until next year, right? Like maybe 3 days from now. But other than that, yeah, we'll definitely do this again. Happy New Year's, you guys. Please be safe. I love you guys. Thank you so much. It's been a wonderful, amazing year. A lot of great conversations. We're going to end the year on a positive note. And with that being said, you guys, let these truths find you where the lies have left you. Good night, and God bless.